Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts off explaining how magic is an amazing power, that people say is a trace left behind by God himself. Magic swordsmen are 1 in 1,000, mages are 1 in 10,000. For the first time in the Burial Empire, a gifted mage became emperor at a young age, which opened a prime era for mages. The first area we're introduced to is a prison cell. We see a man mocking someone saying there's nothing good about magic, as only inferior people use it. He tells the prisoner that he's helpless against magic restraints, and the man is his uncle named Ian. Ian replies saying, "Crony, you haven't changed at all." Crony asks what he means. Ian says there's something he would often tell him when he was younger. About how mages are rare, but most of them are peasant. And if people find out about it, it means he'll be kicked out, so he needs to hide it. But Ian understands now that he's older, that Crony told all of him this because he is envious of magic users. Crony smacks him, saying to shut up. Asking why it's important when he's standing over him, he steps on him saying he's now beneath him. And that he acts like he wants to die, so he has no choice. He says since they are family he'll make it nice and quick. A guard quickly runs into the room, telling Crony that there's a message from Duke Hillen. Crony clicks his tongue and gives Ian a nasty look, and tells the guard he's on his way. Ian says that this is how it ends for him, at the very least he's done what he could have. His life is going to end like this, but someone will remember him as the Emperor Ian Veroshin. Someone wakes him up calling for him, and we learn their name is Naum. Ian asks how he got in here. He says there is no time to explain. Ian says he became a mage and the Emperor, thanks to him, but now he just wants to give up. Naum asks if he remembers the separate building for magic next to the secondary palace, saying he used to hide there all the time, and he'd catch him crying. He was told Todd if he went to that building he would be given another chance. He doesn't know why it had to be there, but something like that he will have to figure out himself. He begins to cast magic on them. Ian asks what he's doing. Naum writes some of it in blood, and Ian tries to get him to undo it. Naum says it's too late, as he's already given his blood. Ian says this is forbidden magic. Crony quickly runs back in saying he knew he would try something, asking what the hell is going on here. Naum tells Ian to keep this in mind, that God doesn't give them problems without answers, and is beheaded by Crony, who says that's some bullshit. Ian is stunned by what he witnessed. Crony raises his sword saying that he prays he isn't born in the next life, and beheads him too. His life begins to flash before his eyes, as Naum's final words echo throughout his head. The clock begins to rewind, and he is face to face with his younger self. We're taken to a fancy estate, with someone yelling at Ian, asking if he can't walk, telling him to get up. Some people are laughing saying they took him in out of pity because his inferior mother, but there's nothing to like about him. Ian says his head hurts. The man asks them to watch their insults, as Sir Molan might hear it. The woman says it seems like he still thinks of him as his son, and the chubby kid says his mother is right. Ian wonders what's going on, saying his head hurts and they are being loud. He wonders where he is, and who these people are. He spots a mirror and asks who he is seeing in the mirror. The man tells Ian to behave properly, and not to embarrass him in front of Sir Molan, and that it'll go smoothly if the Emperor hears about this. Ian wonders if he means himself. Ian wonders if he means him and is confused. The man sighs, saying again with a stupid face, and pulls out a document. He shows him the Emperor's edict, saying he didn't show him since he's illiterate, but he should look at it at least. Ian is confused since he hasn't given an edict any time recently, but is shocked to see that the date is over 98 years ago. Chubby takes the paper asking why he's pretending like he can read. The father says that they put in a lot of effort to bring him here, so stop fooling around and behave properly. Some maids overhear this, saying that this will be the first time Ian is experiencing this, and they wonder if there will be another incident. Ian looks at the clock, saying he isn't familiar with the Emperor of this year, and he's not even familiar with the face in the mirror. He says it's definitely a result of Naum's space-time magic. It jumps us to another part of the building. There is a steak and Ian is munching on it. While his family is confused, Ian says that after all the prison food it looks like he got too used to eating without dignity. Molan tells Ian that his dining etiquette is admirable. The father says that he's too kind, but tells Molan he hopes he speaks to the Emperor for them. Molan says that philosophy is hot these days, asking what Ian's thoughts are, but decides he should ask young Master Chell since he's the eldest son. He asks Chell his favorite philosopher. Chell is dumbfounded, because he is just dumb. He nervously sweats, and Ian says that he must be trying to determine the education standards of the household. Ian says he enjoys Philin. Molan is surprised he reads Philin. Says if you study his humanistic ideology you can read and understand it, which is ideal for the path of a monarch. Molan says that to think he'd know of Philin's philosophy when it just begun to spread really shows how high their standards are. The father says he's speaking too highly of them. Molan says that since his son is so intelligent, even the barbarians in the East would welcome him. Ian says he must be talking about the Heavenly Warrior clan. There's only one area on the border where the Empire and the Heavenly Warrior clan intersects. It is the Brock territory. In the past the Brock family signed a peace treaty with them. Ian's father puts his hand on his. They brought a bastard son named Ian into the family for the peace treaty, and gave him to the barbarians as a hostage. Which is what his father says. Ian smiles saying yes father. It jumps to later, with Chell angrily yelling asking how dare he humiliate him, asking if he thinks he's a noble for joining the family. Ian says that if he wasn't a noble of the Brock family then Chell would have been sent to the barbarians instead. Chell grabs a pot and throws it at Ian asking how dare he speak to him informally. The vase shatters, a piece of glass cuts Ian asking if he wants to die along with his mother, saying he was living like trash yet now he's acting up. Ian's eyes begin to glow, as he releases his magical power, telling Chell he's an arrogant child. Chell falls to the floor, and looks up in fear. Ian says he should know the weight of his words, and he can survive with a shorter tongue. So he needs to watch himself before he cuts it off. Chell cowers yelling not to get any closer. A door opens, and Ian turns to see Molan saying he's brought some refreshments. But he sees Ian's magical aura. Molan is speechless, and the father asks him what's wrong. The mother walks in too. To see Chell on the floor, asking what's going on. Chell stutters trying to tell him. Ian walks beside him saying he told him to be careful around vases, and calls Chell his older brother, offering to help him up. The father yells for a maid named Hannah to quickly take Ian to his room. She tells Ian he should go to his chambers. As Ian leaves he overhears the father asking Chell why he's so clumsy. Molan definitely saw what happened, but didn't say anything. Outside of the main chambers, we see Ian's small room. He says this shit is bleak. Hanan asks if he has the letter from his mother. He asks what she means. She says he cried every day asking her to send a letter since she can't leave. Ian says this pitiful boy was imprisoned and unable to run away. He tells her he won't cry anymore. She then asks for her pay. He asks what she means. She says that she has 5 younger siblings. They can only eat if he gives her food. He asks if she means from his meals, and she says yes, but at least for today. He thinks about it, saying sure but he has a condition, and to help him later when he asks too. She says of course, and thanks him while looking happy. He closes the door and sighs, saying this is a pain. Space-time magic is supposed to bring one back to when it was cast, but somehow he got sent way too far back and is in a different body. If he wants answers he needs to go to the Ministry of Magic. He has to get there at all costs. Inside of Ian's room, he's practicing his magic. Saying he's glad he can use it, since it's rare that he got a body that has the ability to. But coincidentally his name is Ian just like his. He says there's definitely more to this. Hannah tells him she's brought his meal, and he says she can leave it there. He opens his door and sees the aftermath of her taking some of his meal, saying she took a big chunk. But says this is still too little food, and he recalls the banquet with Molan, and he remembers they didn't have gula at the feast. It's a plant that has a lot of nutrients and is a staple food of burial. Other than the seed being poisonous, it was treated as a weed. But it won't be treated as food for another 50 years. If he were to spread his knowledge about gula it would be possible to erase the burial's history of famine. Later in the day he's talking to his father, who is telling him about a feast in a few days, saying other aides from the Central will be attending. Ian says he'll make sure not to cause trouble. He says that's good, and that his mother sent him something. He hands him a bag, saying there's some coins and a letter inside, and he can ask his tutor to read it aloud for him. He says depending on how he does he'll let him see his mother's face before training. A butler enters calling for the Margrave. He stands up and exits the room. Ian says he can't find anything resembling feelings from the Margrave, and he feels sorry for this body's mother. Something catches his eye on the desk, and he picks it up to reveal a letter. He starts to read it, but is surprised to see that it's a second account book. He realizes he must be siphoning the tax that should have gone to the Central, and he's quite bold. This is probably why Sir Molan came all the way here. The door opens. Ian quickly cuts the lights off with magic to hide the fact he's snooping from his father. The butler says they must be faulty, and trips throwing papers everywhere. The Margrave tells him it's fine, and just to pick up the papers. Then he sees Ian is still there, and quickly opens the curtains to see Ian is still in here, and he's standing there with the bag in his hand. He sees the papers still on his desk, asking what he's been doing here all of this time. Ian says he never told him to leave. The Margrave says the barbarians requested for a letter with his signature. Ian asks why his. He says they are a hassle, and he should send them letters occasionally. He'll let his tutor know so he can copy what he writes. The Margrave tells Ian he can leave now. He says understood. Ian starts to read the letter, saying even though he is illiterate the mother keeps writing him letters. The letter is the mother asking how he's doing, saying she is living well. And to work hard for Chell and build a friendship, and once he arrives in the barbarians' lands. Just from reading that he laughs, saying that his suspicions are correct. It cuts to the feast mentioned previously, and the Margrave tells Molen it's good to see him. Another man introduces himself as Digger, and another man introduces himself as Mac. The mother says she hopes they have a wonderful time and asks if they are ready to eat. Molen says that Ian seems to be looking more outstanding every time he sees him. Ian says that it must be because he was looking forward to today, and he's curious about the capital. Mac asks what he's curious about. Ian says he can use this to check how capable they are, asking what they eat. They say there's nothing special in the capital, and it's similar to the Margrave side. The rich eat well and the rest eat plainly. Digger says it would be nice to have new types of dishes. Ian says on that topic, can't food they think is inedible actually turn out to be food? Saying there's no good or bad when it comes to nature, they should just be grateful they can satisfy their hunger. They are all speechless, and Max says he sounds just like the prince. Ian asks who, and Digger says he's talking about Gale. Ian says he was the one who started an uprising and led magicians but failed. Ian wonders if this means they are Gale's people. Max says he's sure they'd get along well. Ian says there's no point getting close to traitors, but he can make use of them. Molen says regrettably time passed quickly, but that he has a small request. The Margrave asks what it is. Molen says he'd like to take Ian and get some fresh air. The Margrave asks if he can send Chell too. Molen laughs saying it's always better to have more people. It cuts to them all walking, and Piggy is gassed out asking if they are there yet. Max says almost, and if it's too tiring they can take a break, and he stares at Molen. Digger tells Molen he and Mac will keep Chell company while he rests. So they tell Molen and Ian they can go ahead. Molen tells Ian he saw his eyes flash golden, asking if he is perhaps a magic user. Ian thinks about his reply, saying he's not sure what he's talking about. Molen says that Prince Gale is always open to getting to know magic users, as magicians are pretty rare. Ian asks if that's the only reason. Molen asks what he means. Ian asks if that's all he's curious about, saying he's sure there's more he'd like to ask him. Molen looks to the side, and Ian asks if he's here to investigate the fake Margrave account, saying he also desires it, asking if he'd like to make a deal with him. Molen says that's interesting, asking if he's going to bring the Margrave's second ledger. We finally learn his father's name is Vrats. Ian asks if he gives him the ledger what he will do for him, saying he doesn't want to get caught up in the crime. He says he's not part of the Vrats family yet, so he won't have to worry about anything, or even being sent to the barbarians. Ian says that isn't what he wants. A way to protect himself from the severe punishment of the Imperial Palace, and gain ownership. He plans to go to the barbarians without being registered. Molen asks if he knows what that means. Ian says yes and that his father will suspect him first since he was close to him, so he needs to ensure his safety by going to the barbarians. The Heavenly Warrior clan doesn't have a good relationship with either the Brock family, or the Imperial Palace. So it'll be easier to befriend them. And as a powerful warrior clan they'd be an excellent card to have. Saying Molen won't protect him or his mother after all. Molen is taken aback by this, and quickly changes the topic saying Chell is late and he should greet him. Ian says to please do. Ian says he'll stay longer, and Molen says it'd be a good chance to explain his hometown before leaving. Ian tells Molen he may leave, and he does so. Ian says the Brock family fell soon, and given his status he can't set foot in the Imperial Palace. So he needs to make sure of that, by giving the second ledger to Molen, helping the family fall apart. He must make the Margraves family his. Before that he needs to ally with the Heavenly Warrior clan to establish a backing. That is his shortcut to getting deep into the Imperial Palace. As he walks back, he spots someone, shaking while holding a flower pot. He puts his hand on their shoulder, asking how they've been. She begins to tear up as it is his mother. She asks him how he's been. He says he's glad to see her, and Hannah told him he should come here. Hannah told his mother where he would be, and how she's so energetic. He says that he's been well, and he received the things she sent him. He tells her he's sorry that he hasn't been in touch more often. He asks her if she sent all of this gold. She says there's no way she'd have that much. He tells her she should take it then, and she should leave. He'll tell Hannah to tell her more of the details. She begins to shake, saying something is going on, isn't it? Saying if he wants to run from the Margraves household then run, and just sending him here has been painful. She cries saying if it's too hard then to run. He tells her not to worry, his eyes begin to glow. She tells him that he won't run away, and to promise to respect his wishes. Molen and the rest arrive, and he says it's time to go. He tells his mother to get some gula seeds, and to take care until they meet again. She hands him the flower pot, saying it's the flower pot he used to care for. He picks it up and smiles, thanking her for bringing it to him. The next day Ian is telling Chell he noticed they are both not in good shape. He says Chell got permission quickly and he's the best. Chell quickly asks why they are starting to train today. Ian says it's just the first day so it'll probably be light. And he's sure the captain will adjust it as he sees fit. The captain seems drunk as his face is flushed, and he stumbles over asking Chell why he's here. Chell says he wanted to check out the training grounds. The captain asks why, saying he's never shown up before. Chell says he's the successor, he can visit as he likes. He says he's a bit chubby, and wants to train a bit, and he should be able to defend himself when his guard is shit-faced. The captain says whatever, asking him to follow him around. He shows him around where the training ground is, along with where they sleep for some reason. We hear a whipping sound, and we see people being punished. Chell asks who they are. The captain says they are orphans. The captain laughs, saying if Ian wasn't lucky he'd be there too. Ian asks Chell if that's true. Chell tells the captain Theo to stop doing that. Ian tunes them out and he realizes that the other orphans are gassed out, but he sees one of them isn't even tired. We learn his name is Barrack and he's a pain in the ass. We hear him get whipped again, and Chell says his spirit is no joke. Theo says he's useful in his own way, but that he's extremely untalented, so he lacks the skill. Which is quite unfortunate. Theo says there are some things that are unattainable no matter how hard you work. Knowing when to give up is important. He should live knowing his place. He says all of this while staring at Ian. Ian says since it looks like training is over they should call everyone over and rest in the shade. Saying he empathizes with Barrack, since he would have been there if he was unlucky. He approaches Barrack asking if he can stand up. Barrack asks who he is. Ian introduces himself. Barrack tells him to get lost. Ian says that's rude, and that he isn't thinking straight so he'll overlook this. He raises his head, but Barrack shakes his head saying to go and leave him alone. Ian starts to pour water infused with mana onto him, saying sometimes people show rejection when their bodies come into contact with mana. So he wonders how Barrack will react to it. It might have been faint, but he felt something. The energy of a magic swordsman. Barrack smacks the canteen out of his hands, asking what the hell he put in the water. Ian says nothing, and it looks like he's regained his energy so he'll take his leave. Barrack sits up saying now that he thinks about it he feels energized. He calls out to Ian who just walks away. Ian writes a letter to his mother saying he's doing well, and not to worry. He hopes she stays healthy until he returns, then he starts to write some of his favorite lyrics. He asks his professor if this is correct, and he says yes he is doing well. Ian thanks him, he says it wasn't much of a hassle anyways. Ian says he looks busy, asking if there's an important appointment. He says yes, asking if it's that noticeable. Ian says he seems different than usual. He tells the tutor he heard that he graduated from Varial University in the capital. He asks if he has any acquaintances, saying if it's too awkward he doesn't have to answer. He says the question is quite sudden, and quickly leaves the room. Ian spots him drop a piece of paper that is on the climate change in the Great Desert. The next day we see Chell running, asking how long he has to keep this up. Theo says 40 minutes to go. He tells them to keep running. While they are running Ian hears them yelling at Barrack. We see Barrack running in, and swinging at his opponent. He dodges, but Barrack gets annoyed and barrages him. The guy blocks it, and says he's pissing him off, knocking Barrack into a wall. He says to stop bothering others. Barrack calls out to him, saying Meryl. This pisses him off, asking how dare he say his name. Barrack stands up saying they aren't done yet. His eyes full of anger, Meryl sighs, asking if he wants to die early. Then kicks him in the chest, saying he told him to stop earlier. He spits on him, saying he won't live long if he doesn't know his place. We see Barrack leaning against some boxes. Everyone starts talking and we hear Ian call out to him. Barrack asks what he wants, since he told him to screw off. Ian says if he wants to win to find a strategy. Barrack says he won't resort to petty tricks to win. Ian asks if that's the case. Barrack grips his sword saying he'll kill him if he keeps yapping. Ian says you poor thing, and pats his head. Saying he'll help him, but in return he'll have to help him too. I think he imbues some mana into him. He takes his hand off Barrack. Ian says he knew it. Barrack leaps at Meryl like a rabid dog. Meryl turns to the side, to see Barrack flying in. He's smiling while he crushes Meryl into the floor. Meryl insults him, and gets smacked in the face, over and over and over again. Everyone is shocked. They quickly run over to pull him off asking if he's gone crazy. But notice he's hella strong right now. They managed to subdue him with 3 people. Barrack starts to laugh and looks really refreshed, saying this is how it should be. And that Meryl is an idiot for turning his back to him. Theo kicks him in the face, and tells the rest to take Meryl to the infirmary, and to take Barrack to the punishment area. He looks over to see Ian, asking if he did anything to him. Ian says no, he just insulted him. Theo says they can wrap it up for today, as the training ground is too chaotic. Ian asks what will happen to Barrack. Theo says they'll need to figure it out, and he thinks he'll get whipped a few more times, and then kicked out. Ian says this wasn't his intention, but it works out for him. It'll be easier to pick him up if he has no affiliation. Later in the day he is talking to Molan and his group asking if he's made up his mind. Molan nods saying that the Margrave usually knows about these things. He tells Ian they need his help. Ian says alright, He'll compile all of the data for the harvested grains, along with the mining output and the farmer's taxes. Molan says that will help them a ton. They respect his decision. Ian says he was right, and that the seal that Sir Molan is wearing is the same one on the paper the tutor dropped. So there must be a connection between them, so he'll make use of this in the future. After the meeting he is walking back, and gets grabbed by the collar, pulled into an alleyway. The butler thought he heard something, and his co-worker asked if he ripped ass. He says nah, maybe it's just a wild dog. We see Beric being a little Seuss with Ian against a wall. Ian says that's a weird greeting, asking Beric how he got in here. Beric says he made a scene all night, and the head butler said he could come in any time. Ian realizes that Vratz already has eyes on him. He asks Beric what he wants. Beric asks if he drugged him, saying every time he's met him his body has felt off. And he better speak up, as he doesn't want to fight with cheap methods. Ian says that his brain is low-key smooth. He says the water he gave him wasn't his, but from the supplies, and he only put his hand on his head. Beric asks then why he felt strange. Ian says he can tell him, but before that he needs to promise something. That he needs to keep quiet about his golden eyes. He says that he also shouldn't be impolite. Beric instantly yells saying yes, those are the eyes he saw. Ian wonders if this is doomed, asking him to listen properly. He says to stay by his side as a bodyguard, and that the power he felt, the power that's hidden within him, he will help him make it his own. Beric wonders what he means by his own power. Ian asks if he knows what a magic swordsman is. Beric says no. He realizes that the time gap is too big. Then tells him to listen closely. There are a few in this world who have the power to resonate with their souls, that is called magic. He has the potential for magic, but that same magic blocks his energy, so training is useless for him. So he needs to use the magic inside him. Beric says he just told him that it's blocking him though. Ian says they need to develop the path that connects the energies of his body and soul. Beric asks if he's going to make that path for him. Ian says he needs to listen first. Beric says they need to start right away. Ian asks if he understands what he'll be doing, saying he'll need to follow him around. Beric asks why that matters, saying he has no home or family. Ian says he might die. Beric says he'll starve to death if he doesn't follow him now. Ian says he likes that, and asks for his hand. Beric gives it to him. He says that he's stubborn and reckless, but that'll make him suitable to be a magic swordsman. They say the greater the magic swordsman is, the more determined they are. They never give up, they never pass up a chance to fight. And have no fear of death. There's no match for a warrior who doesn't fear death. Burke starts to smile as the mana swirls within him. Ian also smiles at this. They do the Arnold handshake. Ian says he looks forward to their future together. It cuts to Ian talking to Vratz, whose words are going in and out of his ears. It's very obvious, and Vratz calls him out on it. Ian spots a ring on his hand, saying it doesn't seem like Vratz has any interest in jewelry, but he always has a ring on. He wonders if it's a wedding ring, but says it's a weird cut. Ornamental gems are usually cut to reflect a ton of light, but seeing how bluntly the ring was cut, it seems to serve another purpose. He heard that sound in the office too. Ian thinks about it for a bit, and Vratz tells him to focus on his meal. Ian apologizes. Vratz says it seems like he's made a friend. Ian says he must mean Beric. Ian says they met in the training field, and have a lot in common. He thought they wouldn't meet again when he was kicked out after making a mistake, but they met again due to Vratz's help. The mother asks what got him kicked out. Ian says he beat someone up. She says to keep someone like that near him it makes him, but gets cut off by Vratz saying it doesn't matter who he hangs out with. Just don't be lazy about his studies, and if he cannot learn to read and write within a month he'll take it as him having been lazy with Beric. And he'll break his neck. Back in the garden, we see the tutor and Molan meeting. He tells the tutor good luck, and the tutor sighs after he leaves. Ian says he was looking for him, but it seems he was talking to Molan. The tutor says it was just a greeting. Ian says that was quite a long greeting. He says it's normal for there to be disagreements with the capital, but what would Vratz say if he found out about the fact that the central administrator and a tutor spent so long talking behind the manor? And that he'd be quite worried about what he would do. The tutor says they didn't talk much, asking if he could consider as he didn't say anything. Ian says on one condition. The tutor asks what? He says to go talk to his father tomorrow, and it doesn't matter about what, he just needs him out of the office for 30 minutes. He asks if that's all. Ian says there's one more thing. And it seems like he knows a lot about the desert, asking if he can get a map of desert along with information about its climate. He says he's a smart person so he knows what he means. The tutor bows saying yes he understands. Back inside of his room, Ian uses magic to construct a mental image of the ring so he can use it as reference and draw and deliver it. He starts to draw it, and then we see Hannah confused asking why he drew a ring, saying that it looks similar to Margraves. He says she recognized it instantly. She says he never wears his wedding ring, only this. And it's really unique so he often looks at it. He says she's observant. However, it's strange that he had to make the key a diamond. Unless there's a reason it had to be one. Then something clicks, and he says non-conductive, saying that since it's a secret drawer it must have something to do with electricity. He tells Hannah she gave him a good idea, and to make sure to ask a carpenter to recreate it with wood and use a rubber cover. Back inside of the Margraves' office, we see the door opens and the tutor thanks him for talking to him, saying this will take some time to discuss. So they need to go elsewhere. Ian lurks behind a corner, and he watches them leave. He asks Hannah if she has the thing he asked for. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out the ring. He says the size seems right, and it's covered with rubber. The carpenter must be quite skilled. He tells her good work, and gives her gold, saying this should stop her siblings from starving. He tells her to keep an eye on the stairs. She says okay. Barak also appears, and asks why he has to do this. He tells him to make sure nobody enters, surely he can manage that. Barak says to leave it to him, after he imbues him with mana. Ian tells him that it's really important. But he'll be right back. He enters the office, getting behind the desk, he finds a hole underneath it. And touches it with the ring, it makes a clicking sound and opens a drawer. He says he's glad it isn't complicated, but is surprised to find letters from the Heavenly Warrior clan. He can't really understand the language, so decides to make his own copy. He says if he puts down specific numbers and stamp it with a seal it should look more legitimate. The capital will probably compare it to the tax reports the Margrave turned in. He starts to stack it back into order. And a knock on the door asks if the Margrave is inside. The butler enters the room to see Ian. His eyes begin to glow as he releases his aura. It cuts to the Margrave asking how dare the butler go into his study, asking what the hell he was doing. The head butler agrees, saying he has no clue what's going on. The Margrave says to throw him away. The head butler asks what he means. The Margrave shouts loud enough for everyone to hear it. He says to take away all of his possessions and throw him away. We see a lot of maids and butlers running around the estate. Barak asks if the incident is resolved. Ian says it could have been dangerous. Barak says he almost died. Then asks if the Margrave knows stuff was stolen from his study. Ian says even if he does he'll just blame the butler. Ian says that it was actually a great thing that Barak didn't stop the butler from entering the room. But that there's a problem. The letter and map he received from the tutor says there is a risk of a sandstorm on the dates he'll be passing through, so to exercise extreme caution. And that the contents of the memo are asking about the leader after the female chief. Ian wonders why this was so important he had to keep it in his secret drawer. It seems like they are writing back and forth. Barak says he understands now. That the black things are letters, and the white thing is paper. Ian says he knows quite a lot. And asks if he remembers what he said earlier. He says of course he does. 1 to burn the key he gave him, 2 to give the paper to Sir Malene and get gold, and 3 to deliver a message to Philia. Ian says good, asking if he remembers the message to his mother. Barak says that it's to go into hiding immediately and gather gullah seeds. Ian says good, he's obtained an excellent guard. Barak says it's nothing much. Ian hears a horse outside, and looks down to see a camel horse thing and a robed figure. He asks Barak which gate he'll use to leave. Barak says the main gate, but Ian suggests he use the back gate. As the Heavenly Warrior clan have arrived, one of them make eye contact with him. So it might get quite loud tonight. That night, Vrats tells him to introduce himself. And the man he made eye contact with is Nur Sarn, the younger brother of Chief Kakonar. His full name is Balamay Chin Nur Sarn. Ian introduces himself, and Vrats asks what brought him here so suddenly. Nur Sarn says the vice chief's condition is suffering, and he would like to move up their family's schedule for amity. It's all for the sake of the future, so please understand. The Heavenly Warrior clan values their vice chief's death more than their chief's. Because unlike the chief who became leader through battle, the vice chief is their spiritual leader. Their traditions dictate that the entire tribe holds a 1-year memorial service, making them want to proceed with this. And, before he can finish his thought, Vrats says while their circumstances are unfortunate, why should they do that? Nursern says that their vice chief Winchen is special. He's led them with his eyes of truth for countless years. Every tribesman has had to face his gaze, and even Ian will have to face it and be accepted by him. Vrats asks if he's doubting his blood, saying they've sent a document from the Empire to verify it. Nursarn says that's just a scrap of paper. Nursarn says he's told him before that Ian is the son of his late second wife. But a piece of paper can't prove he wasn't a child picked up off the streets. Ian says they want to use the eyes of truth to determine if he's Vrats' son, saying it makes sense. As even if he's the Margrave, it's strange he had people from the capital come down to add Ian to the registry. It's hard to tell what would happen to the Amity affair if Winchen dies now. Since he could use sudden schedule changes as an excuse, it would be good, but for some reason the Margrave is hesitating. He wraps his hand around Ian, saying he understands. Since his son will need to prove himself, why don't they rest today and talk tomorrow? And he'll have them guided to their rooms. Nursarn thanks him, and he hopes he makes a swift decision for peace. We hear Vrats yelling saying this is why they shouldn't associate with barbarians. He seems sharp, probably because he is the chief's brother. He tells Ian he'll take care of the registration document, so just stay silent until he returns. Ian says yes sir. Vrat slams the carriage door closed and leaves. Ian smiles saying he must be in a rush to expedite the registration process. But he can't believe he left like that, and he made it quite easy for him to have a conversation with them now. Ian says that they must be exhausted after their trip, telling them to enjoy their food. And he just wants them to listen to his proposal while they eat. Nursarn asks what it is. Ian says that a friend of his wants to go with them. Nursarn says that only Ian is meant to go, saying anyone else would be a burden. Ian says nah, and that he'll surely be of help. It's of course Beric he wants to bring. Ian says that Beric is good at fighting. Nursarn laughs, saying they sure do know how to make them laugh. Ian asks what he means. Nursarn says to them he is nothing more than a freeloader, that wants them to babysit 2 kids who have no poison resistance, nor can they survive without water in the desert. Ian says he knows what they are worried about, but they will really be of help. They'll be helpful in combat, and that he isn't smart. But they don't need to worry and they'll be fine in the desert. Nursarn says that he will think about if he is able to fight against the heavenly warriors and win. Outside of the estate, a woman asks why it had to be her. Saying this is why being the youngest sucks. Her name is Sue and she says they've got 5 minutes. Beric asks if he's meant to fight someone so small. He says they called it a competition, but there's nobody watching. Ian says not to let his guard down, and if he underestimates her since she looks weak he'll get hurt. Ian says they aren't watching since they are unmatched in power. Beric spots Nursarn watching from a window, and Ian tells him his nickname is the God of Death. Beric asks if they are being looked down on since he's watching so far away. Ian says to calm down, and to focus on winning. Ian begins to imbue him with mana. Saying to listen carefully, he'll tell him how to win. A bit later, she asks if they are ready yet. Sue says that it will only take 5 minutes. If he knocks her down in that time she'll acknowledge him. Beric says that's more than enough, and starts to put his hair up. Telling her not to cry after being beaten. He dashes forward, and goes in for a punch. Sue says the one crying will be him, and she quickly moves behind him. He turns to face her, but is too late. He goes for another swing and she asks where he's swinging at. Saying he wasn't even close. She puts her hand on the ground, kicking him in the face. He grits his teeth to withstand it, and manages to keep his balance. She says that if he's this slow he is just going to get beaten up during the entire 5 minutes. Beric asks why she's yapping so much, saying there's still a lot of time their fight continues. Ian watching says that's expected. Beric is just being bodied. She does a barrage of punches, and he blocks them while looking for an opening. He sees her smiling, and she goes for a big kick. As she's in the air, Ian casts magic telling Beric now is the time. Beric looks ready. He catches her kick, which surprises her. He says caught you, and asks her how she likes it now, as he puts her on the floor. She says to get off, and he says this means he won. And if this was a real fight she'd be dead. He tells her not to feel bad, while rubbing stuff on her face. Ian says that this is why they sent her out, so there'd be no bloodshed. He tells her to go admit they won, and he'll erase the mark. Or she can live the rest of her life with it on. She looks angry, but agrees saying to get this pig off her. Poor Beric caught astray. Ian looks up, telling him to get off her. As Nursarn is watching, Ian smiles saying their negotiation is finished now. Back inside the room Nursarn says he said it was a sparring session, but to play such tricks. It feels like an insult. Ian says he's sorry he feels that way, but isn't it better than her leaving with wounds on her face? Nursarn asks if he's mocking him. Ian asks if that's what he thinks. He says to look at Sue's face, what would have happened if she were beaten instead? Nursarn stares, then smiles while laughing loudly. He says that was bold, and that they've lost. He says he'll permit Beric to go with them. Ian thanks him. Sue asks if he's happy now, saying to get this shit off her face. Beric asks if she's mad. The next day it's Nursarn meeting with Vrats again. Nursarn says that their clan would like to express their gratitude for him understanding. Vrats says to tell Winchen he is wishing him good fortune. Nursarn says Damasha, which is like a goodbye in their language. A week later on the day of the peace ceremony. Hannah hugs Ian saying she wishes he returns safely. She cries saying that Ellen wants to make him food for his birthday, so please come back. And to take care of his body. He tells her to listen carefully. If possible he'd like her to stop working after he leaves. She asks what he means. He says that he knows it'll be hard, but it's advantageous for her. She should escape quickly. He thanks her for everything she's done so far. He looks out the window, saying that his life here is over, and that it's time to go to the Great Desert. We see them making it to one of the meeting places of the Heavenly Warrior clan. The chieftain greets Vrats, and introduces himself. His name is Kakanur. Vrats returns the favor. Cockhonour says since everyone is here they should sign the agreement. Vrats looks over it, then pulls out a homogeneity potion to prove they're blood related. They both drop their blood on it, and Nar Sarn whispers something to his brother. He says that they need Winchen to confirm things on their end, so they'll do it after they return. Vrats thinks that the barbarians are dumb for taking their shaman's word over the potion. He tells them to do as they wish. Cockhonour cuts his hand, signing the contract in blood. They say Damasha again. I guess it's like WoW NPCs saying honor be with you. They go back outside, and Vrats hugs Ian saying to take care. Then tells him to remember the reason he is alive. Ian says of course, telling him it's for the honor of the Brock family. He rides away, leaving only dust remaining. Later in the day it was time for them to head out. Beric is chugging their water, while Ian shows them the tutor's map. They make it to their destination, and the people thank Cocken, nickname, for his hard work. Some people ask which one Ian is, and they all agree it's the blonde one. Cocken asks one of the men how Winchen is doing. They tell him he's recovering. Cocken says that's good, and tells Ian to follow him. Ian does so, and they head into a room filled with smoke. Cocken leans by the bed, and tells Winchen that this is Ian, who is here due to the Brock agreement. Cocken helps her Seachup, and she starts mumble rapping. He tells her that shit was fire, and tells Ian it'd be hard for him to understand due to her dialect. She says that she will confirm if he is suitable, and to get close to her. Ian approaches the bed, she grabs his hand. Asking if he is here by the will of God, we can see his old self shrouded over the new one. He tells her that he is. She asks if he's Vrats' son, he says yes. She asks if he is here to bring peace, and he tells her that is the only reason for his existence. She releases his arm, and tells Cocken something. He says he understands. They head out and Cocken tells the rest it's time to head out. And to prepare a room for Ian and his companion. He says also Ian, they have a welcoming ceremony in the evening, so don't be late. Ian watches him leave. Beric runs over asking what the chief said. Ian tells him about the banquet. And it jumps to the banquet. They are all eating and having a good time. While Beric is munching, Cocken calls out to them, asking how they are feeling. They say good, thanks to his generosity. Cocken says the map Ian brought is incredible, and everything about him is something that Vrats prepared for their heavenly warrior clan, so they plan to use it all. Ian tells them that's the plan. Cocken says Vrats raised a good son. Ian sees him smoking gurut leaves. He says he's heard the tribe's warriors use them as stimulants. They might have a strong effect on ordinary soldiers. And that Vrats' plan must be to get close to them. He recalls the pouch his mother apparently gave him. And how she apparently asked for him to get gurut seeds. The handwriting was too neat, and that it was his father trying to get him to sneak him some. Cocken tells Ian that he is warning him now, to not have any interest in the gurut leaves. To lose it, as they are only for the warriors. He can't stop him from inhaling the smoke, but he won't allow questions. Ian says he'll keep that in mind, but thinks that he's sharp. But if he uses it well, he could get rid of the contract between the Brack family and the Heavenly Warrior clan. He looks over at one of the tribesmen. He asks Sue who that is. We learn his name is Bumat. He is Nersam's cousin. He's in charge of food. Ian wonders why he is staring at him. Someone runs into the room, and tells Cocken it's an emergency. They whisper to Cocken, and they both leave the banquet. Sue says that Winchen must be convulsing again. She says the person who was with Cocken is a doctor. Ian says her condition seems bad, asking if there's a cure. Sue thinks about it, saying there is but she doesn't know if it's possible. She says that they need a flower named Salask, but they don't know if it exists. It's meant to live forever by just blooming. Ian realizes that it was the flowers his mother gave him. The next day, we learn that Winchen has been unconscious since last night. Inside of Cocken's office they are all panicking saying they need to find the Salask. Cocken then notices Nasarn, then asks why he brought Ian here. Nasarn says that Ian said he might know something about the Salask. They look like they don't believe it. Cocken says even if that's the case, this is no place for him to get involved with. He tells him to return to his room. Ian says that the flower that doesn't wither after it blooms, what they call Salask. Is it perhaps red? Cocken asks if he's seen it before. He says that he's seen the flowers in the Brack's fiefdom. But in exchange for the information he wants to make a request. Brack is simply a piece of the massive Varial Empire. This peace treaty was something the Emperor wished as well. So his arrival here is the Empire's will. He would like for them to guarantee the safety and respect of a guest of the Varial Empire, rather than someone of the Brack family. Cocken gets angry, saying he's trying to bargain with Winchen's life on the line. And he wants to ask him, if he were to cut his head off right now if the Empire would send an army. If it's as he says they certainly should, right? Ian says he doesn't know about an army, but it'd definitely be a problem. The imperial mentality has been passed down to him. Though his body is related to Vrats, his mind if of the imperial family. Cocken says that sounds like a joke, don't make him laugh. He says it's because of people like him that their god brought Winchen among them. She sits up in her bed and Kakan tells her that Ian claimed to know of Salask's whereabouts. And that he has the imperial mentality apparently. He asks her if it's true. She stares at him, and begins to see a golden light from him. She shakily stretches her hand out, then puts it to her shoulder and bows to show respect. As she's seen something behind Ian. She starts to pant heavily, then falls over. The attendants quickly run over to check on her. Ian tells Kakan the Salask is in his tent. Kakan yells, telling the rest to go get it. Ian leaves the tent, and Beric asks what's going on, and if they need to run. He tells him that it's fine. As it's his first gift to them as a guest of Ariel. It jumps to them sitting at a table. Kakan thanks him for his help. He says he's heard it wasn't enough, and she'll need more roots. Kakan says it was still helpful, asking if he can get more Salask. Ian says he can't be certain if he can. Ian says that it's been a while since he's grown them, so he's uncertain how to care for them. But he can't get them for another fortnight or a month. Kakan asks why it would take so long, since they can get there in 3 to 4 days. Ian says if he wants to hear the specifics they must promise him something. Kakan asks what it is. He says in their treaty with the Brack family, he wants them to prioritize him over the Margrave. Kakan says it seems like he wants to overthrow his father. He says that the strong becoming the leaders should be the same here too. Kakan smiles, saying that priority would be hard, as he has no control over the Brack fiefdom. Ian realizes he's right, and says he'll tell him now. Soon an army from the Empire will head down. And it's because of tax evasion, that the Brack family will disappear in a month. Kakan asks if he's telling the truth. Ian says he swears to the heaven it's the truth. They ask how he knows about this. He tells them that those who came from the capital were talking about it. Kakan says if that's the case, he won't be safe either as he's a Brack. He says that is true, while he is Vratz's son, he isn't by law. Since he hasn't been put in the family register yet. He is just Ian, rather than Ian Brack. Kakan is angered by hearing this, but Ian says it means the Empire has no legal evidence to use against him. And he can become the new lord of the Brack fiefdom. Kakan says to send an unregistered child. This is just deception at this point. Ian says that he is still Vratz's son, but he will trust Kakan's decision as a leader. He asks if Ian has anything else to say. Ian says that since he won't be able to trust him, he will give him a broad idea of what'll happen. Ian says once his father dies the territory will be empty, and to lead his warriors to enter Brack with him. He won't have to worry about fighting the Empire's central army. They will try to avoid fighting him, as they are afraid of the great warriors. Even if they somehow fight, Kakan can return to the desert. He just needs his tribe to stand behind him. It would be nice if they added the words that they are on his side, as he's become like family to them. Kakan says he knows they won't face loss from this, but if they help a bastard son acquire Brack, what would they gain? Ian says that he will turn it into the best territory of Ariel. And he will show them the true power of a sincere alliance. Kakan tells him they have a need to change. It's not just a trade for commerce or numbers and letters. True peace and a genuine alliance. Where the heads of both sides can trust their backs to one another. Nersum says there is a big problem. If Vratz, who is pushed into a corner due to treason, asks for their aid, they have no reason to refuse him. As he's the one they've signed the treaty with. Ian says that he has a justification they can use to break it. Ian tells them that his father secretly ordered him to bring back some gurut leaves on his birthday. Ordering someone who was sent as a symbol of peace to smuggle an illegal product back, especially an item they've got banned, is a good enough reason to break the alliance. Kakan laughs, saying it's more than good enough. But just breaking the alliance isn't enough for him. He asks Ian for proof. Ian says none that are physical, but he'll be able to double check through Winchen. Kakan says what he just said is something he'll need to swear to God for. Ian says if that's what he wants he'll do it. Kakan laughs, saying alright. He thought all of the Brock people were idiots. But Ian is quite extraordinary. He asks if he truly only wants the heavenly warriors to back him. Ian says yes. Kakan says he has a question. Asking him why he is doing all of this. Ian says if he goes to the capital, specifically the palace, the Brock territory that he expanded himself will be the only thing backing him up since he's from the remote regions. Kakan slams the table, saying he wants to make one thing clear. They do not intend to spill blood for his sake. Ian says he doesn't want that either. Kakan asks if he's not afraid of death. Ian says not at all, since he's already died one. Kakan smiles, saying that he likes his determination. They shake hands. As Ian goes to leave, Kakan asks if him going to the capital has anything to do with the Emperor's current state of mind. Ian smiles while leaving. Other tribesmen see Ian and are surprised he isn't dead. Ian looks around and sees Sue. He asks if she can help them if she has the time. She starts to panic, asking with what. He says he wants her to train Beric. She looks happy. We hear them scraping, and she is flaming Beric the entire time. He tries to attack her, but she says that he's too slow. Ian watches them train, and asks Beric if he's okay. Beric says not to talk to him. Ian watches, saying this is peaceful. He was going to work slowly to bring the Heavenly Warrior clan to his side, but things took care of themselves thanks to the Salask. It's been a while since he was able to rest like this. However, if he thinks about the past, he doesn't feel too good. It jumps to him talking to Winchen, saying he heard she wanted to see him. He says she looks better than the last time he saw her. He's glad she is feeling better. Kakan translates for her. She says that she called him here, and wanted to continue the conversation from last time. Ian says everything he told Kakan was the truth, and he swears on the heavens. He says there are some things he hasn't mentioned, but they aren't related to the Heavenly Warrior clan. She tells him that God said to change everything about him. He asks what she means. She continues saying that even if it may be his entire existence. Ian looks up, saying it must have been a divine message. The Heavenly Warriors clan doesn't take oracles through a temple like the Empire, but through their shaman. Winchen. The change everything about him comment must be it. He says unexpected things happen with him in the desert. A girl approaches him with a basket of fruit, saying to try these. He thanks her, but she says it's nothing. She says it's thanks to him that Winchen started to feel better. They are even preparing a banquet to welcome him. She says that he's their savior. And once he's rested enough, he needs to meet with Kakan and Winchen. He says alright, he'll be there soon, as they are almost done training. She says she'll let them know, then reaches into her pocket, saying she found this when replotting the Salask. She pulls out a necklace, saying that it's his right. He wonders what it could be, saying it's his first time seeing a gem even as a prince. He wonders why a bastard son was growing Salask, and why it was hidden inside of the pot. He thinks that the original Ian didn't know, since if he did he probably would have sold it. And the fact that it was in the soil means that the one who placed it was the one who planted the Salask. He wonders if he was asked by someone to take care of the flower. There's just not enough information to figure it all out right now. So he just has to wait for more info. He just hopes it won't set back his plans. Beric asks him what he's doing. He says nothing, asking if he's done getting bodied by Sue. Beric says nah, it was a tie. Ian says yeah, sure, and it's time to go. Ian decides later in the negotiations to ask them to teach Beric more about being a great warrior. Since he wants to be stronger, he has a long way to go, but it's good since everything is going pretty well. So he should focus on his tasks. We hear loud sounds coming from the Margraves' house, as a butler bursts into Vrat's office. He tells the butler to leave him alone when he does paperwork, asking why it's so loud today. Then he is told that the Imperial investigation team has come. He yells, and we see the Imperial investigation team enter the estate. We're introduced to the head of the team, Bertie Erica. She looks up to see Vrat's running down the stairs. She asks him if he is the Margrave. He says yes. She introduces herself, saying that she was dispatched here to do a tax evasion investigation and she will be diligent about her investigation. Vrat grabs onto the railing, yelling that this is an insult to him. He says that he's defending against the barbarians for them out of loyalty to the Varial Empire, yet they suspect him of treason. She pulls out a paper saying that the seal on this paper is the Brock seal, saying that there needs to be an investigation. He sweats nervously, asking what this is. She says that this is a nice place, and she'll be managing it for now. Everyone including the Lord would be wise to cooperate. She tells her team to start from the top. They all start to round up the butlers and maids to question them. Vrat says that Erica knows exactly where his office is. She investigated the manor before coming here. He wonders if Malene is the one behind all of this. But how did he get his hands on his seal? He wonders if someone helped him from the manor. He'd like to ask the butler, but he's still not waking up. Then he recalls Malene being close to Ian. He gets angry, and shouts his name, since he must be the one behind this. A messenger of Vrat's enters the desert. Kakan is told that the Brock fiefdom is asking for assistance. The messenger says yes, as he is being accused of treason, and it's unjust. Kakan asks why they plan to resist with force, asking where the proof is that they aren't committing treason. If it is proven as treason, it would mean they'd make the Empire enemies. The messenger says that the proof of it is Ian's life. According to the Margrave, that proof of his innocence will come with the death of his beloved son. Kakan starts to laugh at this. The messenger is confused. Kakan says they'll follow him soon. The messenger asks what they'll do about Ian. Kakan says whatever he wants. Regardless of whether he is the symbol of the peace treaty, they don't want to dirty their hands with the blood of one who spent time in the desert. The messenger says the Margrave understands that, and he'll be the one to deal with it. Kakan smiles, saying alright. Later Ian enters Kakan's tent. Kakan then tells him that the messenger from Vrat's is here to kill him. Ian says he expected this. The messenger asks Kakan why he's treating Ian with so much respect. Kakan says that if he wishes to kill Ian, he is giving him a chance right now. The messenger thinks that this is hella weird. Ian is still relaxed even after hearing that, and the chief is acting like he knew he'd be here. He grits his teeth. saying that something must have happened. But their intentions aren't relevant. He draws his sword saying he needs to do his job and return. Beric meets him blocking his sword's path. The messenger is surprised. Ian tells him if he'd like to take his head he would need to take care of Beric first. He smiles, telling the messenger he will be waiting. Ian says there's a limit to training, since he can't practice against killing intent. So if he faces someone skilled and hostile, he will be able to obtain a higher level of swordsmanship. Ian and Kakan watch from the side. The tribesmen start to chant Beric on saying he's got this. He tells them to quit yapping. They comment how since his mouth is working so well he must be in good form. Some of the other ones tell the messenger, or well, a knight I guess, to take his ego down. Beric tells him to go easy on him, as he'll be going all out. The knight says that's a vulgar attitude. Beric charges in, saying that's his charm. The knight asks him why he's attacking him like a mad dog. Beric says that's a compliment. The knight sees a chance, and elbows Beric in the chest, with enough force to cause him to spit up blood. Beric falls to the floor, and the knight kicks him. Ian and Kakan don't seem concerned. The knight goes to attack Beric, who grabs a handful of sand, then throws it into the knight's eyes. The knight quickly gets it out of his eyes, but is too late as Beric hits him in the face. The knight says that's annoying, and tightens the grip on his sword. He says every minute counts here, and he has no time to waste fighting a brat. But he realizes Beric is more stubborn than he expected. They both charge at one another. We see blood as one of them has been injured. Beric has been stabbed in the side. The knight says that he is skilled, but this is the end. Beric screams, and the tribesmen say if he wants to kill him he should just kill him. Instead of this kind of insult, Beric grabs the sword then begins to lose consciousness. As he falls over with it piercing through him. The draws another sword saying that there is no time, he needs to die for them to prove the Margraves' interest. Ian doesn't look fazed, as we see Beric coming from the top rope. The knight turns, barely avoiding the sneak attack. He is confused, asking how the hell he is standing with a sword through his chest. Beric grabs the blade, and pulls it out saying that he isn't done yet. The knight grabs another blade saying he is annoying. Beric begins to be imbued with mana, as he is resolved to die while fighting. They clash swords. The knight blocks 2 attacks from Beric, then knocks him away. Beric leaps off the ground again. Ian says one must be ready to burn everything, even if that is their own life, to achieve a higher level. He slices the knight down. The knight loses his grip on the blade, and falls to the floor. Beric also begins to lose consciousness, and falls over saying he's tired. The tribesmen are all impressed by him, saying he did great. Kakan says he knows why he brought him here. Beric has the natural qualities of a warrior. Ian smiles, asking where else can you find someone with a personality like Beric's, and he tells him good job. Outside the Brock estate are guards watching every exit. Vrats frantically walks around the room, until Teresa loud sound at the window. He turns shocked, to see that it's Sue. She says he doesn't look good. He recognizes her, and asks where his knight is. She hands him a bag saying that it's Kakan's answer. She asks what he said, and tries to confirm if Ian is dead. But she leaves without answering, and he shouts. He looks at the bag worried, and begins to read the paper. Kakan tells him he's confirmed that they tried to break their promise, by sending an unregistered bastard son to them. He starts to shake in anger, as the mother opens the box, and feels disgusted by what she sees. He finishes the note with Kakan saying due to the Gurut leaf thing as well he is breaking their treaty. The mother falls to the floor screaming, as we see the knight's head roll out of the bag. Vrats gets pissed, and yells that he'll kill them. There's also some books there too on the floor, but it might have come from the table. Vrats says they want to screw him over, but there's only one thing he can do. He's already considered a traitor, and with or without the Heavenly Warrior clan's help he can expel the investigation team. He starts to home alone a curtain, to use it as a rope. He tells his wife and Chell to go down and hide in the hidden warehouse. The mother asks what he'll do. He tells her to shut up and do as he says. They do so, and he says the timing is important, before the Central Army arrives. He needs to take care of Erica's team. He starts to burn down the office, and a man bursts into Erica's room saying something big is going on. He tells her that Vrats burned down his house and escaped. She says he's definitely just shortened his life. She tells her subordinate to inform the troops from the Central Army and the rest can go with her. She tells them to search every corner of the manor, and it's okay to kill him. She grits her teeth, saying when everything is over the manor would be hers, so how dare he burn it down. The investigation team keep bringing buckets of sand trying to fight the fire, as the butlers and maids scream asking for help. Erica sees this and one of them asks her what they should do now. She thinks for a second, then says they would die with Vrats anyway, and to put the fire out just a bit, if they still have energy then find Vrats instead. She tells everyone to fan out and find him quickly, and we see that she looks determined. It cuts to Vrats riding on his horse. He says right before being locked in his room for investigation, He used the butlers to send messages. One was to the Heavenly Warrior clan, and the other was to the first Prince Margrave. And there was one more. We hear Vrats yelling the name Theo, but nobody appears. He wonders if they ran already. Then he calls out for Vrats, and appears from behind some bushes. Theo asks if he's okay, and if the Heavenly Warrior clan will help them. He says no, they betrayed him. They just need to hold on until Margrave replies. He says they need to reclaim the manor before the reinforcements arrive. He says if it's just the investigation team they can fight them off. Since the Brock soldiers are well trained and specifically trained to fight the Heavenly Warrior clan. The soldiers all kneel saying they understood. Theo says if they win this battle he'll end up with the authority over their military power. Vrats raises his sword into the air, saying that it's time to reclaim their lives. We see a hawk, or well, I'm not a bird guy. A bird flying overhead, and it flies back perching on someone's hand. It's shown that it's none other than Sue watching over the fire. It cuts again back to Barrack being treated inside of the infirmary. The doctor says they need to get more medicine, so keep an eye on him. When the doctor leaves, Kakan is waiting outside. He asks how long it'll take for Barrack to heal. She sighs, saying it'll take a few months. Since that was a wound which would have instantly killed an ordinary person. But because of his stubborn personality he is holding on. Kakan says Ian must feel hopeless, since Barrack is his only warrior. Ian overhears this, and says not at all. There's always a way after all. He begins to imbue mana into Barrack. As he channels his mana in, he realizes that this isn't working, and he shouldn't put any more mana into him. The doctor returns, seeing Ian wobbly. She asks if he is okay, he says he's fine. She tells him to wait a minute and she'll check on him after making sure Barrack is okay. But she sees him just snoring away, and asks who the hell he is. He tells her his name, and she says that isn't what she meant. She says his condition wasn't one to improve this quickly, and that this is crazy. Kakan starts to burn some leaves, saying he'd have brought more if he knew Ian was in a bad state too. Ian asks what he's burning. Kakan puts it in his mouth, saying it's the gurut leaf, it's how they avoid death. Ian asks if it'll be effective on Barrack. Kakan says he's not sure they'll be the first outsiders to have it. Ian thanks him while chewing on it, and is impressed he shared it. Kakan tells him that Sue reported back that what Ian said was accurate. Vrats is gathering his troops, but there's no report on the Central Army right now. Ian says he needs to find out the size of the Central Army, and the investigation team. It's necessary for predicting the overall situation of the battle and preparing countermeasures. Kakan takes the leaf from his mouth, saying that he needs to rest now since they have a few days. He begins to burn the leaf, and Ian begins to feel sleepy. The doctor sees him on the nod, then catches him and puts him in the bed beside Barrack. Now they slumped out. That night Ian wakes up, to see Barrack still sleeping. But he feels a presence behind the door. Ian grabs the blade saying they were acting favorable to him, but now he feels murderous intent behind him. The door opens, and a masked figure attacks Ian. It knocks the weapon out of his hands. The figure grabs Ian by the throat. The masked person says he should have stayed in a corner like the mongrel he is, asking why he dared to plot something. They ask if he realizes how bad things are going due to him and Barrack, and calls the Empire's bastards are useless. Just like his father Vrats. They go to attack him saying it's not too late to die. Ian uses magic and grabs onto their arm. An explosion ensues. They quickly wonder what that sound was. They realize it came from Ian's room. We see Kakan being told about the attack. They make it to his room and they ask him what happened. He says he doesn't know either, and he suddenly tried to kill him. Kakan tells his men to take care of Ian, and to confirm the attacker's identity. Kakan then wonders how Ian even subdued them, along with the explosion. They take off the mask and are surprised. The man tells Kakan to look and we see it's none other than Bummat. Kakan says he'll interrogate him tomorrow. The next day we see him get sand thrown on him. Kakan asks if he's come to his senses. He opens his eyes, to see them all watching. Bummat asks him to release him. But Kakan quickly cuts him off, asking if he attacked Ian this morning. Bummat can see on his face he is dead serious. He grits his teeth saying he won't make excuses and if you consider him family to just cut his arm off. But that Kakan needs to watch out for Ian, as he uses a strange power. His eyes turn golden and he created an explosion. He tries to tell him he's suspicious. Ian says he's trying to avoid the answer. Since Winchen can easily find out if he lied, so he's trying to hide answering. Ian asks Kakan if he can have a word. He says yes. Ian says he heard him mention Vrats, and he called the suggestion he made to Kakan an evil plot, so he must have colluded with Vrats. Ian then realizes something, and it's about the letter mentioning who will inherit the chiefess's position. Bummat looks surprised. Ian then asks if he was the one who sent it to Vrats. Then he recalls more about it, asking if maybe Bummat was the one trying to harm Winchen. Bummat sticks his tongue out, then bites it off in front of them all. They quickly go over and try to stop the bleeding. Ian says he heard he was in charge of food. Maybe he might be why Winchen's condition worsened. He might have been offered the position of chief for eliminating her, and Vrats might have tried to help that come to fruition. Kakan stands up, asking where Winchen is. They say she's in her residence. Kakan grabs Bumat by his head, telling the rest not to let anyone into Winchen's room unless he tells them so, and he drags Bumat away. Inside of a room we hear him screaming in pain, and after a bit nothing but silence. Kakan opens the door covered in blood, telling them all to throw the corpse out and arrest Bumat's family. They say yes. He walks over to Ian, and asks if the explosion from Bumat's assault was his doing. Ian says yes, and that's just how it ended up. Kakan says he's heard the Empire called people like him magicians. Ian says he had no intention of lying, and he'll tell him the truth after returning to the Varial Empire. It would be difficult for him to understand now, since the time and environment they've been living in is too different. Kakan thinks about it, saying they need to alter the plan a little. Ian asks how so, and he says he was going to simply support him until they returned to Brox and he developed a foothold. But they dared to deceive him under the pretense of peace. They also tried to kill Winchen, so their clan will now claim Vrats's head. Ian nods, saying he understands. However, the investigation team won't give him a chance, since he was branded a traitor. But if he manages to obtain the Brock domain, he will help according to the clan's will. Kakan says they need to help him either way. Ian says he is the one requesting help. Kakan agrees to it, and says Damasha while sticking his hand out. Ian says okay, and they fist bump with him saying Damasha. He heads back to the infirmary asking Barak how he is doing. He sees Barak happily greeting him. Barak tells him that he feels great, and compliments the doctor for totally not putting alcohol into the medicine. The doctor is happy too. Ian helps him lay back down, saying that it's strange, even though he knew he would recover quickly, this is still too fast. He asks Barak if he remembers his parents' face. Barak says of course he does, though they are dead. Ian says he shouldn't have any mixed species blood, and wonders what the reason is. Barak then asks when they are returning. Ian says soon and maybe even tomorrow. Barak is glad to hear it. Ian tells him that he cannot go with him. Barak sits up but hurts himself. Ian says this is exactly why. Barak says to just wait to see how he heals tomorrow. Ian says that there's no other choice, and battles against the Margrave soldiers, along with the other armies, is what awaits them. He tells him to focus on recovery until they are done. Barak starts flaming the hell out of him, calling him a beansprout and other insults. He grabs onto Ian begging him to use mana. Ian says he's surprised at how he treats his master, and to go easy on him, since he's just a beansprout. And asks if he doesn't remember, saying that he was already using mana by himself. Barak is confused, asking if he really was. Ian says yes. Nurse Sarn then enters the room asking if he can come outside for a moment. As they've got news from Vrats, we see a bird landing on Kakan's hand. He says the timing is perfect. Vrats is circling the manor with his private army, and the investigation team are holding from the inside, waiting for reinforcements. And the citizens are hiding near the bank. Ian tells him that's because the bank is an area of non-aggression. He says the Heyman Bank is in charge of the Empire's financial infrastructure. There's at least one branch in every area. If they end up harming the bank, they will deny anyone service who is related to the matter. That's why both the investigation team and Vrats won't attack it. Kakan says it's just a sanctuary in a way. Ian says exactly. But that they need to hurry. The residents who can't get protection will turn to Vrats' side. Kakan says that they'll leave for the Varial Empire tomorrow then. Back at the Brack Manor, we see a war breaking out. Vrats is talking to Theo, asking what the Marlrow people are doing, saying their fiefdom is next door but they aren't helping. Theo says they refused their messenger. This angers him. Theo tells him they don't have many soldiers or workers anyway, as it's a commerce area. The horn of the cavalry is blown, and they both look over afraid. Seeing the Empire's flag, Vrats starts to panic, realizing this is bad. They fall back, and it takes us to the Heyman Bank. We see all of the citizens at the gate trying to get in. They all start to do their best to get inside as the capital's army murdered everyone inside of the mansion. It jumps to Hannah holding her brother shaking in fear. Her brother points out to see a giant bird in the sky. Hannah's eyes lose their fear, and turn to hopeful instead. As we see it's Ian riding into town. They are walking through the city. We see a kid crying for his mother, while others argue over bread. Kakan says it's worse than he thought. Ian says he doesn't know. It just seems as exactly as he thought it would. We see the civilians panicking thinking the barbarians have invaded. One of them called them heartless for thinking it was the perfect opportunity to invade. One of the tribesmen named Mugaroon, Mo for short, says he's pissed they keep calling them barbarians. A child stumbles beside Kakan's camel horse and looks up to see him. Kakan tells everyone else to be wary of the child while riding there cushily. The boy is surprised. Ian stretches his hand out toward him saying to stand up as the ground is cold. A man sees his, and quickly runs over since it's his child. He is surprised to see Ian, and says that he was the stable manager of the mansion. Ian says he sees and it's been a while. The man then asks what he's doing here. They start to chat for a while and other civilians walk forward asking if he knows him. The manager tell them that it's Ian, and they recognize him, but ask what he said. The stable manager says that he said the Heavenly Warrior clan was here to help them. They arrive at the mansion, and we see Barrack is tied up, but completely out of it. Sue asks why he brought him. Ian says he has no choice, he would have caused trouble if left behind. Some of the inspection squad point their sword at them, asking how the barbarians got here. Kakan goes to kill him, but Ian takes his hood off introducing himself, and the Heavenly Warrior clan. He says he isn't here to fight. He and Erica make eye contact, and Ian says to inform her of their presence. Inside the estate, we see Kakan and Ian sitting at a couch. Erica enters the room, asking if he's Ian. Saying that she's heard of him from Sir Molan. Ian asks if she's one of his subordinates, she says in a way yes. Ian asks her what happened outside, she says surely he saw. There were some issues, but it's concluded for now. They've also confirmed the tax evasion. But that Vratz's knights were annoying, which is why she's still cutting them out. Then she says besides all of that, asking what they are doing here. She says she's heard he has a lot of grudges about Vratz. Asking if he's curious about his execution. Ian says Brock is his homeland, he couldn't sleep well at night because he was worried about the situation. Since the Heavenly Warrior clan was worried as Vratz's ally they also came. Erica laughs, and puts her feet on the table saying that's bullshit. And everyone in the Centra administration is aware how the Vratz and clan are at each other's throats. And that Ian is living roof, as he was sold to them since he's a bastard son. Ian closes his eyes, and lets out a chuckle. This annoys Erica, and he says it's only natural she has so little knowledge about the Brock family. Ian says he's sorry for his rudeness, but the way she speaks is quite grand. Then takes a show about how she's a bastard as well. This angers her, and she goes to say something. But Kakan stands up, saying he is the center of the Great Desert, so stop with her vulgar speech. She's already confirmed tax evasion, so hurry and execute Vratz, then leave. And they'll take care of the Brock fiefdom. She slams the table, asking if he's lost his mind. She calls him a beast, asking if he knows where he is, saying she's an emissary of the Empire, he is disrespecting the crown. He tells her to mind her own words, he's shown enough generosity listening to her rant. She shakes her fist, and asks Ian if he wants to die with his father, saying everyone knows he's his son, so nobody would blame her for killing him. Her face turns red, as she tells him to stop talking back to her, and he should know his place. He says he knows it very well, he is Vratz's son, but he isn't a member of the Brock house. He is also a citizen of the Empire who interacts with the Heavenly Warrior clan. The investigation team's purpose is to confirm and punish Vratz's embezzlement. Not to take over his land afterwards. So is it out of line for him to request she leave? She says a damn peasant dare to open his mouth. Kakan throws a letter down, saying this is from his clan. They've agreed to ally with the Brocks, and they desire peace more than anyone else. She asks why he's stating the obvious. He says according to the treaty they must assist Vratz, but now he's a criminal and Brock is just a small piece of the Varial Empire. So they'd like to help her, but since Ian is the one who brought him here, they'd like him to succeed in everything related to Vratz. He asks what she thinks, she is surprised, asking if she heard it correctly. Since it sounds like he's trying to turn a bastard son into the Lord. Ian smiles at her, and she sighs saying they've lost their damned minds. She grits her teeth, saying there's no fault in him other than his blood. The backlash from the citizens would be severe if they tried to make someone else take over, but if Ian steps forward they would be able to accept that. Not to mention he already has Kakan's backing and that is important for fiefdoms bordering the desert. She says even so, it is up to the Emperor to grant the land. Ian says he is aware of that fact, until the Emperor reaches a decision nobody can interfere. She looks annoyed, she says fine and she gets the idea of what they want. But they've not yet tracked down Lady Mary or Chell, she has the responsibility to catch them in order to restore His Majesty's name. Ian says they'll assist her, they'll also take care of the aftermath. As the investigation squad is already hated by the citizens. So to make sure it's smooth they'll take care of it, she tells him not to do anything stupid like helping Vratz. He says she's unaware of their relationship, but please don't work as he'll bring him here to her. He closes the door saying he'll show her how serious he is. Erica gets pissed, saying she just has to hold on until the palace designates the lord for this land, she'll make them all shut up. She yells for a paper and pen. It jumps to Vratz in the forest, not gonna lie thought she had him caught earlier on, I must have been lost. He asks Theo how much longer, he says that since Marlrope has the gates closed, they need to head to the Hanwan kingdom. Vratz is pissed it's ended up this way, saying he'll have to keep an eye out for an opportunity. We see a bird flying above, then a soldier beside Vratz gets killed. Kakan says it's been a while Vratz, and we see him looking down on them. and he says that he looks like a mess. Theo and them start to panic. Theo says to protect the Margrave. We see a familiar red-haired man jumping at Theo with a sword. Beric holds his side, saying that stings. He asks if he remembers him, saying he used to beat him all the time. Ian asks Beric if he's okay, he says yes and tells him to stay back. Ian smiles at his father, saying that he's back. Vrat starts to get pissed and yells at him. Beric swings at Theo, we see blood as his shield has been shattered, and I'm assuming Theo is dead too. It cuts back to Erica, who is staring at the floor, to see that Vrat's is in a bag. He tells her that his soldiers' corpses are laid out in the front yard. She says he's capable at least. He says since they've caught Vrat's they'd like her to do his punishment quickly. She says how arrogant, she's yet to finish her mission. She has to find Chell and Mary still. Ian asks if they left the fief, she says they couldn't have, as they've received no word about a woman or child leaving. She tells him to feel free to search for them in the town, and it would be nice if they stayed there. Ian and Kakan watch her leave, then she is talking to a subordinate telling them they need to find them first, and double check the corpses for them as well. And once they find them, they can continue their plan. He says yes ma'am. He will keep them hidden until the Emperor appoints a new lord. It cuts to Nurse Arn saying that Erica is quite clear and that she's waiting for the Emperor. Ian says he's noticed it as well. Kakan says this is just a matter of time until she becomes lord, and their clan will be losing their investment. And that Ian better have a plan for this. He says that he's right, she will become the new lord. But that also means they just need to buy more time. It'll take 2 weeks for the letter to reach the capital. Kakan asks how this favors them, saying they are crawling everywhere to find his son and wife. Ian says that Erica explained it herself, she hasn't completed her mission yet, as her mission is to bring the house down, right? The reason they are staying here is because they are confident that Mary and Chell are still here, but once it becomes known they've left they would have to chase after them to complete their mission. So if they find them first, they can use them as bait. Kakan chuckles asking if that's so. Saying fine since they've caught Vrat's they just need to watch for longer. Ian thanks him for listening. Kakan asks him what he'll be doing now. Ian says that he has something to do, so he'll head out first. He promised to meet up with Beric after he finished his chores, so why don't Kakan and the others rest for now? Ian says they might be in the manor still, as the darkest place is under the lamp after all. It's a saying, the problem is that most of them who have any clues are dead. But at times like this it's best he goes himself. We see Beric yelling for him, he looks over to see him waving. He says he did what he asked him to. He's confirmed that his mother is doing well in the forest, and he says she seems relaxed. He tells him to be quieter about it. Beric says nobody is listening anyways, then asks why they are in the slums. He says yes, he's here to meet Hannah. He tells him to take the leak. Beric says okay, but asks why he has to do it. We see Beric asking around trying to find out where Hannah is staying, and after a bit they go up some stairs. Ian enters the room to hear Hannah talking to her little brother. He calls out to her, and she cries while running over to him. She starts asking him a million questions, asking if he came back for her. He says it'll be okay, and to calm down. He asks if she knows of any rumors about there being a hidden area around the manor. She says she doesn't recall anything like that. He says that's troublesome if only the head butler was alive. She is surprised, asking if he's dead. Ian says yes, apparently he fled toward the wrong border while running. Marylrope recovered his corpse. He asks her what's wrong. She says she had to apologize to him, as she borrowed something from him while leaving. They realize she yoinked it. They say surely others suspected her of stealing it as she left. She says she borrowed it. But Mary was really sensitive and lashed them every day. He asks why Mary. She says she was assigned to her, but she doesn't know the specifics. He must have been stressed. Some marks appeared on her arms and legs, but anyways she pulls out what she borrowed. Saying only when she opened it she found letters and drawings, but didn't feel good about it, as it felt like stealing memories. She asks if she can bury it at the butler's funeral. Beric goes to open it, but Ian tries to stop him, since a lot of it will spill out, and that's exactly what happens. One of them catches eye, and Beric says to hand it back. But Ian says to hold on, as the manor looks weird from the image. Beric asks how so. Ian explains how usually they don't include every detail in paintings like this. But yet they included this random tree. Ian says that maybe this is the secret. Inside of it we see Chell and Mary. He tells her he's hungry, and she says to eat some jerky then. He asks her how long they have to live like this. He tells her to wait a bit longer, there will be an opening soon. She says even if they need to run for the rest of their lives, her parents in Fontal will help them. So they should remain here for as long as possible till the heat is gone. The door opens and they both seem worried. The candle blows out, and she begins to cry hoping it's Vrat's. Ian calls out to them, saying so this is where they were. Sue is also there saying that this is a crazy hidey hole. Mary charges at Ian with her knife, but Sue blocks her. then pins her against the wall. She screams saying it hurts, asking why she is doing this. Then starts to flame them for being commoners. Ian says he knew she'd be sensitive, but this is worse than he thought. He tells Sue to let her go, and for Shul to get Nurse Arn and Kakan. Mary starts to repeatedly tell Ian to die. Ian tells her to stop now, as the investigation team is still in the manor. If she gets caught she'll be executed. Chell asks if he'll be saving them. Ian says he looks sickly, and says there's nothing he can do since father is already caught. But asks them to leave with the warriors. He asks Mary where she can run off to. She says to Fontrol. He says that's north and it would take 2 weeks if they went around Marilope. She asks why they have to do that. He says they closed the gates and killed their butler. She is surprised, saying there's no way that bitch would do that. She starts to panic, saying she needs to visit the main house, then they can go to Marilope. He asks if she's lost her mind. She starts to tell him that if Vratz is alive they just need to wait for the Empire to answer, they can't chase them out. He says if she doesn't shut up he will gag her. He wonders if she doesn't understand, saying she won't stop spouting nonsense. On the outside of the hole we see Kakan asking Ian if they were down there. He says yes and they just need to let them out at dawn. He says okay, and tells his men to take care of it. He tells them to follow them as far as they can and when they are far enough to dispose of them, making sure nobody can see them. Ian says he'll see how long the Imperial Army will stay in the countryside. One of Erica's subordinates enters saying that they found Mary and Chell. There are 4 of them, and they split into 2 groups after making it past the gate, fleeing to the north. She thinks about, saying that Marilope won't get involved. But that Mary's family is in Fontrol, right? They say yes. She says to send a letter there. They ask her how many men to send there, and she thinks about it, saying to think carefully. This could be a distraction, they might have more soldiers on standby. And if they leave the manor the damned barbarians will take over. She says to send 20 people, and make sure to keep them alive if they can, but he can bring back their heads if they need to. If she can catch Mary and Chell, then nobody will oppose her taking over the fiefdom. She says that Ian and those annoying barbarians, she can deal with them all at the same time. One of Mary and Chell's escorts draw their sword, and cut the investigation squad's members' heads off, leaving only their corpses behind. We see Erica distraught that the squad was all killed. The sole survivor says after they killed the captain they got mercilessly slaughtered. They called themselves the Knights of Vratz. She asks if they remember how many there were, and if Chell and Mary were there. He says yes, he is quite confident. She tells him he can leave, and is left in pure anger. She slams her table asking why the Empire's response is so damn late. Her subordinate tell her that it's because the letter is being sent by land. Any decree marked with the Emperor's stamp is sent on a golden carriage after all. She says that's ass, then asks what Ian and the barbarians are doing. He tells her they aren't doing any suspicious, they are just helping rebuild the town, and it must be to get goodwill. She says that this isn't good, they are taking it for themselves. But now that she thinks about it, it's strange. Mary and Chell were gone this entire time, but only recently appeared escaping with unknown men. She starts to think that Ian has something to do with it. She tells her subordinate to call for the stable master immediately. She asks how the hell she made such a mistake. She should have checked their horses earlier. She calms down as someone knocks on the door. We see it's Ian. He asks if she's made any progress in finding Mary and Chell. She asks why he cares. He says he's really curious, since if they are alive and plotting something he won't be safe. But that the people who escaped with her asking if she's certain they are the Vratz Knights, suggesting if Erica has a traitor. She asks what nonsense he's talking about. He says if the traitors are trying to put her into a difficult spot, by hiding those 2 in a spot she couldn't find it would make sense. The investigation squad's goal was to bring the Brock household down, but they couldn't find Chell or Mary, and until they find them they can't complete their goal. At the very least they'd have to find their corpses. She calls him a filthy mongrel, asking where he found them. He says he doesn't know what she means. She draws her blade, saying to stop acting so coy. And how dare he work with the Heavenly Warrior clan to belittle the Empire. He says she is barking up the wrong tree right now. He says if she wants she can check if any of the Heavenly Warrior clan is missing. She gets pissed. He asks if she didn't confirm their numbers before letting them in, saying that seems kinda lazy. Her subordinate enters the room, saying that the stable master said 2 of Vratz's soldiers' horses have gone missing. Ian says as expected, and there are definitely traitors behind it. He tells her to chase them quickly. She starts to stutter out of anger, then says she'll kill him one day. He smiles saying that she's scaring him. As she leaves, his smile turns into one of success. She tells her subordinate to gather all of the soldiers. He tries to warn her it's bad, but she says that they can't let their guard down and they are playing coy, so if they catch them they can prove it. She says to make sure to keep an eye on Ian and Kakan, and report if anything is strange. We see the hawk from above watching all of this, and reports back to Nurse Arn. He says it's just as Ian has said. They are making their move now. He asks Kakan if he can use the other hawk. Kakan says sure, just give him sweets. Nursarn says he hopes their men do well, since there are mountains, and they are used to the desert. Kakan asks if he doesn't trust his family. He says of course not, since they are warriors. Nursarn says that after the Imperial army leaves they need to prepare to leave after killing Vrats. They can't leave the desert for too long. Kakan agrees, but says that since Ian goes to the palace he'll need to go to the capital, so who will take care of this land while he's gone? He says he isn't sure, as he'll have Beric with him. Nursarn quickly picks up that he's hinting that he will be the one in charge, and says he doesn't wanna. He says he's sure it's a benefit to them, but they don't know if Ian will permit it or not, and he hates it here since it's cold. Kakan says that's important. Nursarn says that he hopes the succession gets decided before it gets colder. He has a feeling it'll be delayed. Kakan says sure, then asks what'll be going on at the palace. It cuts from the manor to the first prince's castle in the capital. We see some books, and a man take his glasses off. And a butler says he's sorry for the intrusion. We're introduced to Mari Vorosian, Varial's first prince. He asks why he's here so late. The butler says that Vrat sent a secret letter. It's unmarked, but it has the Brock family heirloom in it. Mariv seems interested, then begins to laugh, asking the butler to read it, telling him where he thinks the lies are. He says it's hard to tell. Mariv says that Malene advising him to join the second prince is probably the truth, since that alliance actually exists, with Malene as one of Gale's men. But the part about him refusing them after and how his son framed him must be a lie. The butler says he agrees too. Mariv says surely the investigation squad was dispatched, asking who is in charge. He is then told that it's Bertie Erica, who is one of Malene's subordinates. The butler says then maybe Gale is preparing to charge Vrats for treason. Mariv says he's unsure, but for now bring all of the documents related to Vrats's land, and anything that Malene reported. He then tells his butler that he will be attending the minister meeting. He hopes Gale isn't planning anything stupid. It cuts to later in the day, with a meeting starting. They wonder why the first prince is here, and they begin to panic. Mariv watches them all talking and smiles. They finally get to the matter of the Brock tax evasion. They've confirmed it and seized the assets. But that Vrats resisted and fought back, but they defeated and arrested him. But they are chasing his wife and child. They decide he needs to be killed immediately, and to notify the Empire. Mariv says he has a question, asking if only those being punished are his wife and son, asking about the bastard son Ian who was in the report. He was ineligible to be registered into the family, so he should be turned into a slave, rather than killed. He's also built a close relationship with the Heavenly Warrior clan. They ask the prince if something caught his eye. He says he was just curious. If Vrat suspects that Ian and Malene colluded, it means that Ian is on Gale's side, and it'd be troublesome if Gale allied the warrior clan. They start to discuss what to do with the fief after taking the household down. They suggest sending someone from the palace to take care of it, then they can get the delayed taxes too. Mariv shakes his head saying he's concerned about that, saying the citizens and the Imperial army were fighting, meaning if they place someone from their side there they'd be met with hostility, which would reduce the output, and not to mention since it's closest to the warrior clan, they need someone to speak their language. They start to talk among themselves, and the Minister of Magic, a woman named Wesley, asks what Mariv has in mind. He smiles, saying that they should postpone appointing the Lord. She says it might create more chaos if they do. He says they'll simply dispatch an advisor temporarily. Wesley suggests Erica do it since she's already there. He sighs, saying she's killed the family of the citizens there, not to mention she is still trying to catch those who escaped. They start to think about it, and one of the ministers says that both Wesley and Mariv made good points, asking what the other ministers think. They start to yap, but thank God we don't have to hear it all. He raises the gavel, saying they've reached a conclusion, and they'll close the meeting now. As for appointing the new lord of the Brock fief. But it cuts back to the manor, as the soldiers of the capital are leaving. The citizens talk about how they must be trying to chase Chal and Mary. The other citizens are happy they are leaving. Erica watches all of this, saying they are so excited, she hopes the soldiers can get their corpses at least. A warrior stops her from re-entering the manor, saying that they'll be using it from now on. Since there are only 5 of her men left, she can sleep in the tents outside. She barks at him, asking who he thinks he is talking to. He says if she has any complaints, then talk to Kakan. She says to take her there now. Erica says that he plans to use the manor. That sounds like a bad joke. They need to use the tents like usual. He says that if she wants to stay here she needs to lower her numbers. He says they can give her a room. There's a storage room at the end of the hallway that isn't being used. If she can't find a way to reduce her numbers, to let him know, as he needs a chance to unsheath his sword after all. She shakes in anger, saying if only the paper appointing the Lord was here. One of her subordinates enter, saying it's arrived. She asks what has, and he says they received a letter from the capital. She starts to get really happy, saying that they are screwed now. It's kind of cute, and she'll head down immediately to get it. He says not to worry, as he's already brought it with her. He tells her they delivered it by carrier pigeon, and her mental starts to crumble. Ian laughs at her, and he keeps laughing while she is completely frozen up. Kakan doesn't understand. Her subordinate asks if he made a mistake. A bit later we see she's told them the contents. Kakan has been briefed by Ian that if it's from a pigeon and not a carriage, it means it is nothing about the new lord. Ian says yup, and we see the letter just mentioned sending Malene and his boys here to temporarily help lead the thief. She shakes in anger. Kakan snatches the paper out of her hand, and she tells him to get it back. He looks at it, then realizes his ass is illiterate, so hands it to Ian. Ian tells him what it says. They are delaying appointing a lord, and sending an advisor instead. Kakan asks what they'll do. He says that they'll be in charge of reconstructing the thief, and will be in charge of Ian. He says that means they are more important than Erica. She realizes that the letter might mention a delay in appointing a lord, but at this rate she'll end up as someone who failed to take the Vrat's household down. She'll be removed from the list of potential candidates. She wonders how it got this bad. Ian asks her why don't they have a talk. He says he's unsure about the other parts, but he'd like to help her with punishing Vrats. She is surprised. He says that the only people who know of this letter are here, so if they stay silent nobody will know. They've got 2 weeks until advisor Lomander arrives, so if they kill him before then, there will be no way for them to meet. All he asks her is that she allow the Heavenly Warrior clan to handle it, as it shouldn't matter who is the one to finish it. She says that she will think about it. Ian says she truthfully has no option. Sue watches her leave, and they ask her why she's just standing there. She awkwardly holds out a dead bird, asking if it could possibly be a letter from the palace too. He says she really had to cause an incident. She says it kept loudly tapping the windows with its beak. It's from Malene, saying they have a problem as it seems like Vrats wrote a letter to Margrave, and he joined the meeting to delay the appointment. Malene says he'll be heading there quickly, but don't feel disheartened. Ian says he was wondering why it went so smoothly. Kakan says it's a power struggle, asking when Vrats had the time to send out a letter. He says he doesn't know, but it's pointless as Margrave spoke publicly already. But when Lomander arrives, he'll have to make sure to treat him well, since Margrave suspects he's colluding with Malene, and he'll believe that Ian is on Gale's side. Kakan says this is troublesome. He sure considers Ian a thorn in his side. Ian says that's why they need to make it clear. It'll be difficult if they have everyone against them after all. Kakan asks him if he plans to take Margrave's side in all of this. Ian says he is the legitimate and true heir. Since the advisor was tasked with reconstructing the thief, they will be able to decide when the Heavenly Warrior clan can return. Kakan says he was meaning to ask about that, and since all they've come here for was to kill Vrats. Once he dies, he can send the warriors back before winter comes. Ian says okay. Kakan then says that Ian going to the capital and having to take the title will be through his own ability, saying he surely knows this. Ian says he does. He doesn't need to worry. In the early morning a few days later, a hawk brought news that Mary and Chell had been dealt with, and Vrat's execution ceremony was planned. We see them doing construction on the gallows. It jumps to the dungeon, and we hear footsteps approaching Vrats, who is lying on the floor. We see Ian telling him that today is his execution. In that short time, it looks like he sent a letter to the Imperial Palace, asking if he was trying to get Margrave's help. Ian smiles, saying he is actually grateful. Thanks to him, Erica was not appointed as the Lord. Thus, she has to leave Brock soon. As a result, his execution was pushed forward. He then tells him that Mary and Chell are both dead. Of everybody who carries the Brock name, he is the last survivor. He puts his foot on his head, telling him not to be upset, as he was the one who raped a woman in a brothel and made a bastard. Then, in order to sell that bastard off, he separated him from his mother. On top of that, he was scheming against the Heavenly Warrior tribe. Finally, he was ousted by the capital and his own people for stealing taxes. He gives him a cold stare, saying that this is just karma, as Vrats cries out of frustration. A guard tells Ian that he should leave soon, and Ian says okay. We hear Vrats's muffled screams, as Ian glances back with a face full of contempt. He leaves his father's prison cell. As we see him exiting the dungeon, he begins to head back to his room, then glances up to his right, looking up at the Brock house. He sees Erica in the window, and she instantly closes the curtain, saying that the situation is screwed up. She wonders why Malene hasn't contacted her, saying he should have known the assembly's dissension and sent her a pigeon. If things keep continuing like this, the execution will happen, and she won't be able to stay here. Then, one of her servants enters, saying that the preparations for the execution are finished. She looks annoyed but says all right while grabbing onto a scroll and tells him to show her the way. It jumps to her standing on the gallows, looking down at the citizens and telling her men to bring her the criminal. We see Vrat stumbling his way up the stairs as he is blindfolded. They whip him to get him to move faster, and everybody realizes that he looks horrible. All the citizens start to discuss the rumors about Mary and Chell as well, but are just glad that they will finally return to their normal lives once this is all over. A horn gets blown to silence the crowd, and Erica introduces herself to them all, saying that she will now recite the crimes of Rat's Brock. She starts to go through it, saying that he was falsely reporting taxes. The citizens wonder what she's talking about, and she explains the actual details about how although the coal mines produced 60,000 tons of coal, he reported only half the production taxes, and on taxes only said they earned 8,000. The citizens start to get pissed and throw rocks at him, asking him how he could do this to them. We learn that some of them even sold their houses to pay off their taxes. Erica finishes reading his crimes, saying as a result of the Varial Empire for all named Brock, there will only be eternal death. As a result, this will be the end of Brock and his lineage. As we see Vrat staring at the gallows, he realizes the weight of his crimes as all the citizens chant, telling him to die and that they hope he suffers a painful death. He starts to sweat nervously and spots Ian in the crowd as the hatch drops below his feet, leaving him to hang in the air. Erica tells anyone who had a grievance with him to throw a stone, and the stones they throw will become the foundation of Varial and will raise a monument that will solidify the status of the empire. The citizens start chanting, and we see tears form in Vratz's eyes due to the lack of oxygen. Then we hear Kakan call out his name, and we see him with a spear in his hand. He raises his spear and primes it for launch, yeeting it forward directly at Vratz, piercing him in the chest. We see 2 more spears also pierce his chest from Nersum, and forgot the other guy, it's been a while. As the blood starts to fall from his corpse, they stare at him as if they are satisfied with their revenge. They then yell that Vratz is dead. Kakan looks up at the corpse and asks Ian if he's done already. He says that he didn't throw anything at him, and instead of the ropes, it should have been his hands around his neck. Ian says he's not sure, but watching him die does give him a weird feeling. It makes him think of the things he couldn't say. Kakan asks what he means. Ian says he wishes that he could have told him to beg him for forgiveness, but in the end, it wasn't his, but the real Ian's forgiveness he needs. History has changed in his life, but originally, just for the reason that he inherited the blood of the Count, he would have been sold away by his country and became a grain of sand left alone in the desert. Kakan asks if he doesn't feel refreshed, and Ian says that he does and smiles, looking up at the sky. Saying that this is only the beginning, it jumps back to the gallows, and Erica asks her subordinate if they have heard from the capital's reinforcements. He says they have arrived, but they say all the traces of Mary and Chell have disappeared. Erica looks annoyed, asking where the traces ended. He tells her that they stopped abruptly at a nearby valley, and there are no traces in the forest past that. The trackers say that they received a messenger pigeon from the General Assembly. It explains that if the pursuit of Mary and Chell gets delayed, the soldiers should go back to the capital. Erica is surprised by this and starts to face palm. Her subordinate says that a return order has been issued to all the soldiers who have gone to the provinces, but it is not clear if it is the decision of the assembly or not. Erica starts to think about it, saying that if the reinforcements from the capital were not enough to find them, she even wonders if she would be able to do it herself with the manpower of the Inquisition team. Her subordinate calls out to her, asking her if she has received any communication from Lord Malene. She then wonders why she hasn't received the letter, as all pigeons wear a magic stone so they cannot get lost. She realizes that it must have been killed by some pigeon gang violence. She bursts into Ian's room, calling out to him, and he asks her what's wrong. She says that she needs to slice open the stomach of this hawk, as we see it sitting on top of Nersum's shoulder. He asks if that's a joke, saying he'll cut open her stomach first, and he will hang her next to Vratz. She says this is a big deal, and the hawk might have eaten a messenger pigeon. Ian says he knows something about the pigeon, and she asks what it is. He tells her that it wasn't eaten, but there was an accident. The pigeon was buried, and he removed the magic stone. It shows the envelope in the magic stone, inside of a drawer. She slams the table, asking him why he would hide a message from the palace, saying this is a serious crime. He tells her that it wasn't actually from the palace, but rather a personal pigeon from Lord Malene. Erica starts to wonder what Malene wrote, saying he's not an idiot, so he would not have revealed his plans in writing, but if some piece of evidence bites them in the ass later, it would be bad. So she tells Ian to hand it over. He says of course, as long as she finishes up her business and leaves in 4 days, and it seems that Malene was in a hurry to send the letter. So if she were to leave now, instead of later, he'll be more than thankful. She starts to realize what he's trying to do, but reluctantly agrees while grabbing the letter, saying that she'll recover the bodies and leave tomorrow. He tells her that she made a good decision, but she says his name in an annoyed tone, and said that he should leave before the advisor gets here, if he thinks he'll be free to do as he wishes just because he is not an official member of the family register. He is mistaken. The advisor is someone who has received official orders to manage the territory. If he thinks that a bastard like him, who was born in a brothel, can face him just because he's using the power of the barbarians, he'll be in trouble. Ian tells her that it would be nice if she didn't call them barbarians, and if the advisor comes and asks for her whereabouts, and he has to tell him that she's dead, it would be an issue for him. She says that it seems like he doesn't understand the situation, and she gets right in his face, saying that she will return, and that he should prepare for that day. He smiles lightly, saying that he doesn't think that'll happen, as his eyes begin to glow golden, and he releases his aura, saying that she should be the one who shouldn't have any misguided hope about returning. Just find Mary and Chell's corpses and make it back to the capital, since if she makes the wrong move, she will die here. She is surprised by the fact that he's actually a magician, and she sees the aura floating around him while he grins at her. He then closes his eyes, causing the aura to dissipate, and he tells her that she should leave, as the exit isn't that far. Her subordinate then runs over to her, asking her if she's okay. We see her face ridden with defeat, as she says that she didn't expect him to be a magic user. He won't be demoted to a slave. In fact, the capital will probably stumble over themselves trying to invite him in. She tells her subordinate to pack his bags, as it's time for them to leave the territory. They need to turn Vratz's corpse over, and get the reinforcements to find Mary and Chell. She says they might as well get this over with quickly, so she can look good to the capital. We see her and the boys riding away in their whips. Ian watches this, saying that it looks like things are wrapping up, and he wonders if he should go and meet her, while looking at an amulet. We then see him in the woods with Barrack, asking him if this is the right way. Barrack says it should be. He then asks if he doesn't know where they're going. Barrack quickly changes it to this is the right way, as there's a mark here and a black rock. He says that he needed to hide her well, since she's this far away, nobody would be able to find her. He says there she is, as we see Ian looking at a rundown cabin. Barrack wonders if she maybe went out. Ian enters the cabin, and looks around, and realizes there's nobody here. He then hears something drop behind him, as he turns, seeing his mother surprised that he is here. He begins to smile and asks her if she has been well. She runs over and hugs him, while crying, thanking him. She asks him what happened, asking if he's eaten, saying that he looks rough. Barrack wonders what she's talking about, and Ian tells her that it is a long story, so they can sit down and talk about it. After she's been filled in on the story, Ian says that there's still something he has to say. Although Vratz has been dealt with, there are still lots of things to take care of, and people will be coming down from the capital. He tells her that when they go back to the capital he plans to follow them, and he's not sure if he can stay with her anymore after this. She begins to cry, and asks him if they'll be able to see each other still. Ian looks down happily and says of course. His mother then hugs him, saying then it'll be okay, as that is enough for her. To be honest, she doesn't want to go down to the village. This is much better than when they were in the slums, and she likes waking up to the sun and the river. What's most important to her is that Ian is finally standing up for himself. We see Ian looking happy, and then he puts his hand over hers, saying the situation will soon be resolved, and she'll be free soon, and he'll provide her a place to stay. We see his mother is just truly happy that he lived. Even after the war broke out, and the Count died, Ian still lived. Ian then says there's something he wants to ask her, and she asks what it is. He asks if she remembers where she got the red potted flower she gave him. She thinks about it and says that she got it in return for doing chores for the merchant union. Ian asks which one. She says she doesn't remember its name, but it was a pretty large one. She then had to help out because they were short on workers. They ended up giving her plenty of money, as well as the plant. Ian asks if she remembers anything else, and she starts to think about it and says that she was told there was someone really important at the union, and their name started with M something. Ian starts to think about it, saying that he sees. He's not certain, but there might be a connection between the Silisk, the jewel's owner, and this merchant union in question. Since she says that it's a pretty large union, someone in the village might remember something about them. He sits up, and she asks if he's going to leave already. He says he has something to do, and he'll come visit her again. Then she recalls something, asking him if he needs any gula seeds, and we see her throw a bag of it down. She says that he told her before to gather some, and there are 2 more bags besides these. He's surprised and says that she really does have a green thumb. She says she has a lot of time on her hands here, asking him what he needs them for. He says these are edible since the seeds are not poisonous. Then he pops some in his mouth, surprising them both. Beric says he let himself get distracted for 1 second, and he's eating some strange shit, telling him to spit it out like he's a dog eating the remote. Ian puts his hand on Beric's shoulder, telling him good luck. Beric asks why he's saying good luck. Ian says he's going to be carrying all the gula seeds to the mansion and hiding them. It jumps to a carriage riding on a dirt path. We see a man crying inside the cage, saying that Margrave is so mean. His name is Romandro, and he is the reconstruction advisor. He says he just came back from the reconstruction of the temple after the big earthquake, and now he's being sent to Brock right away. He starts to cry, saying he misses his wife. As we hear Malene asking him what he thinks the situation in Brock will look like. Romandro thinks about it, saying that it sounded pretty serious from Captain Erica's report. He doesn't know if anything was done, but he'd be happy if they arrived there without getting stoned. Malene looks angry, saying he sees. After Erica took over the territory, his very simple plan was ruined. All because of that inferior whore's child. He hopes there will be no surprises awaiting them. They finally make it to the palace, and we see a bunch of the tribe members standing guard. Romandro is confused and says that is the Heavenly Warrior tribe, and he didn't hear anything about them being here. Malene says it's probably because he'd be too scared if he knew. Then Ian knocks on the door, asking him if he's Romandro. And he tells both Malene and Mac that it's been a while, and he bows respectfully, saying please be aware as no one uses the name Brock anymore. He assumes the letter has yet to reach them due to the distance, and he'll explain everything once they are inside. Then we see Romandro shaking hands with Kakan, as Ian introduces them. They ask about their alliance, and Ian explains when he was in the Great Desert he heard the news that a battle broke out here. The Heavenly Warrior tribe came here to help him, and ended up finding out about the sins of rats. Violence was unavoidable, but the Heavenly Warrior tribe helped them with the reconstruction since the investigation team is busy with their investigation. Romandro says he hasn't heard about this in Erica's report, asking where she is. He says that she is tracking down Vratz's wife and her son. Malene then pulls out a letter, throwing it in front of Ian, saying that this tells him to eliminate them, asking if he's not of his bloodline, and according to the nation's laws he is technically a slave, but he is dressed up and living life like a noble. He asks what Erica's been doing, saying she must have lost her mind if she let him do this. Ian puts the paper down after reading it, saying he is someone who has been out of the Empire. His heart is in Varial, but officially he is from the Great Desert. If they wish to eliminate him, he will just return to the desert. Malene asks who said he could do that, and Kakan says he did. His territory has stabilized enough, and they are planning to return soon as well. Romandro tells them not to jump to conclusions, as he can tell those sparks are flying. Ian says if he says so, and he was excited to see him when he heard that the Imperial Palace would be sending a reconstruction advisor. Romandro says the situation here is better than he expected, and the first prince has taken care to appoint him to this. Malene tells him this is a serious issue, and there is a possibility of treason because of the fact that he has led the Heavenly Warrior tribe into the Varial Empire. Asking if he intends on letting this territory be influenced by the savages. Romandro says that people's lives depend on this, asking what does it matter who is helping. Malene stands up, shouting that they are in the Varial Empire, so they shall adhere to its laws. He tells Ian even if he was to return to the desert, he would have no choice but to carry out the laws. Romandro calls out to him, realizing that this is a mess, and he says for the sake of reconstruction, and to keep an upper hand over the second prince, they need his boy. Ian says it will be bad for him if he were to return to the desert. Malene realizes that he is sharper than he assessed him to be last time, and he needs to chase out Ian so Erica can return. He then tells Kakan that he will let the Imperial Palace know that he was of help, and it would be best for him to leave instead of listening to the son of a whore. Like the advisor said, a lot of the reconstruction is already underway, so there is no need for them to stay here any longer. We see Ian beginning to release his golden aura, surprising them, as the papers float through the air, and he says that he just told them it would be bad for him if he were to return to the desert. Romandro starts to realize that Ian is a magic user and is super surprised by it, asking him since when. Ian says he's not sure. It's a power he's naturally been able to use for a while. Romandro says that life has so many surprises, to think he would see a magic user outside of the Ministry of Magic, and he begins to laugh. He says that he did think that Ian looked mature for his age, and everything that happened in Brock must have been centered around this child, and he asks to shake his hand, saying that there is a saying about it being good luck if you meet a magic user before they become a mage. Ian laughs, saying that's fine with him, and we see Romandro shaking his head while Malene looks angry. Romandro says that this is a huge honor for him, and he wants this to be resolved quickly so he can go home, and he wants his wife to always be healthy. Like he's wishing on a shooting star. Malene says that it looks like he saw correctly that time. He overlooked it last time because he thought he changed the subject, but he should have confirmed it. If this is the case, bloodline no longer matters, and he wonders if Ian really plans to become the next Lord of Brock. Ian then asks Romandro a similar thing, if he is planning to become the next Lord. Romandro says no, as his mission is to reconstruct the county and recover last year's missing taxes. He thought it would be difficult, but now that he's here, it looks possible. Things are looking up, especially after meeting a magic user. Ian laughs again and says that the first prince delayed the appointment of the next lord, and the second prince forced Malene into the matter and sent him here. And he asks Romandro if he's following the first prince. Romandro asks if it was that obvious, saying that Prince Margrave is quite interested in this place. Ian again says that he sees it's an honor, and he will help him out to the best of his abilities. And they should discuss the specifics after dinner. They've come a long way, so they should rest. Romandro says he was feeling tired since he's been in the carriage all day. As everybody goes to leave, Malene calls out to him, saying that he would like to have a word. Ian nods to Kakan that it's okay for him to leave, and then they are left alone. Malene asks him what he is doing, and why they made things so complicated. Ian asks what he's talking about, saying that he gave him the criminal and he gave him his freedom in return, and they had no agreements on what would come after that. Malene yells, saying at that time he definitely said he didn't know anything about magic users, and it looks like he is coveting the Brock territory. If he were honest at that time, things wouldn't have become this twisted. Ian asks if he's meant to have such obligations, saying that he was just choosing the best path forward for himself back then. What he tries to say to him now has nothing to do with him. Malene sweats nervously, asking him what he wants. Ian says that's what he wants to know, and he takes a seat, asking him what he wants. Malene says he needs the next lord to be someone who will help them. If he doesn't want to give up the position, they should come to an agreement. Ian asks how he could say something like that. The duty of a lord is to follow the will of the emperor. Malene goes on saying something, but he gets interrupted by someone telling Ian there is a letter that has arrived from Mirloff. Ian says okay, and then he stands up, saying he will leave first, and that Malene must be tired from traveling. Since he is a guest at the mansion, he will make sure everything is prepared well for him, and he leaves him sitting there. As the door closes, we see that Malene is hella angry about all of this. It jumps to Romandro's quarters as he is writing something down. A butler says that he has brought him dinner. Romandro tells him to come in, and we see the man bringing in some cheese and bread and some meat. Romandro asks if everybody in the manor eats the same things. The butler says that all of his subordinates have been given the same meal, asking if there was something specific he wanted. Romandro realizes there are no fresh fruits or vegetables, only preserved foods that have been dried or smoked, and it looks like their food supply is not stable. It's likely many people died and the fields were destroyed during the revolt, but he doesn't care. Eating at a table and sleeping in a place where wind doesn't come in is all he needs. We see him clean his entire plate, and then Ian knocks at the door, asking him if the food was good, and if he can come in. Romandro says yes, asking him how Malene is. He says he's also having dinner in his room, and he's brought him a gift. He synthesized all of the information about the reconstruction, and to reference it as he needs. Romandro then asks what's the state of the food supply. Ian says that the Inquisition and the Imperial soldiers put a heavy burden on their food supply. They're currently going through the manor's food stores, but soon they will be empty. Thus, it would be better to only tax 30% of the normal amount this winter. The assets that the citizens have presently reported are half of last year's, so they'll need sufficient funds for reconstruction. If the palace exempts them from this year's taxes, then even 50% is possible. Romandro asks him if he calculated all of this, and Ian says yes. Romandro is surprised because all the rumors state that Ian is a lowborn, but this is detailed enough to be implemented instantly. He then closes the notes, saying as he said before, his mission is to return things to normal, so he has no leeway to adjust things like this. Ian says he understands, and will have to go for the next best option. He then shows him the letter he received from Mirloff earlier. Ian says he had asked the Count there to sell them some food, and they said they would send him a list of options and prices. Romandro is surprised again, asking him how he does things so well. Ian says that their situation regarding the staple grains of rice and corn isn't great either, so the price is expected to be above normal. Romandro begins to realize that he might be able to return before winter at this rate. Ian says that it looks like they'll have to engage in trade with them. They don't have much funds, but they'll be able to secure a week's worth of food from them. Romandro says not to worry about it. He has reconstruction funds, so they'll be able to buy 2 months' worth. Ian bows, saying that he'll let them know his reply, and he leaves the room. He realizes something is bad, and he tells the boys that they have a problem. Beric quickly asks him what the problem is, and Ian says he won't adjust his objectives. Kakan says he predicted that, though. Ian says he did, but he hoped it wouldn't happen, but it looks like they'll be forced to pick the second best choice. Beric then asks if he had construction funds, and Ian says yes, he has around 3,000 gold. Beric's eyes light up, saying he's the best. Ian suggests that they keep approaching Mirloff as it's the best course of action, and they'll have to prepare well. Kakan says okay, and then asks about Romandro, saying he seems friendly to them, asking if he got the same feeling. Ian says yes, as he was sent by Prince Margrave, so he's willing to oppose Malene and Prince Gale. Since Vratz's fall was a conspiracy between him and Malene, he must have thought that he was on Prince Gale's side. But after seeing Malene be immediately hostile towards him, he must have figured out that he should stand on the same side as him. If they can fully bring him over, then everything will go according to their plan. Kakan says okay, and he was pretty surprised to think the Empire would treat magic users this well. It looks like becoming the Lord won't be impossible, and they should drive a wedge in before it falls. He tells Nersum to make sure to observe Malene and his companions closely. Ian then asks Beric if he did what he instructed him to. Beric asks if he's talking about the planting of magic stones for eavesdropping, and Ian says yes, and now it's time to move. It jumps to later that night. We see Mac and them all in a room, and he's asking what they should do, saying he can't think of anything. Deeger tells him to calm down, and Mac asks how he's meant to be calm, saying he's not as laid back as him. Saying Erica or not, the new Lord has to be someone who is on their side. But obviously he saw Ian's attitude earlier. Using his status as a magic user while having the Heavenly Warrior tribe as his backing, and he's now sticking towards Romandro. He's very quick about it. It looks like he's figured out that they're here to check on Romandro and vice versa. He then tells Malene that it would be better to push for someone else instead of Captain Erica. Deeger calls him an idiot, asking if he doesn't know of her personality, as she moves not out of loyalty for Prince Gale, but solely out of her desire for power. If they don't give her the position of Lord, nobody knows what she will do. Malene thinks about it, saying if the person blocking them from the front has no intention to get out of the way, and there's no way backward either, there's only one option left. They need to get rid of the one in front, and keep moving forward. As we see him pouring himself a glass of wine, he says furthermore, if it's a magic user opposing them, then it's cleaner to just get rid of him before he becomes a mage. Max says he agrees, and if he becomes a mage and grows too fast for them to control him, he will only get in the way of Prince Gale. Malene thinks about it, saying without Ian, the barbarians won't have any justification to be here, and Romandro won't have anybody to rely on, and won't be able to use his full strength. He swirls his cup around, saying for some lowborn bastard to dare block the prince's path, it just won't do. And there's always a way they can just quietly observe the situation for the next few days to come up with a better plan. They all agree, and then we see them using some medieval type as Bluetooth, as Hannah is the one eavesdropping on their conversation. We get a little bit of world lore now. To the east of Brock is the Heavenly Warrior clan of the Great Desert, and to the west, the Monet Desert, is the neighboring territory of Mirloff. As it is adjacent to the Hawan Kingdom, Mirloff is a territory with active trade, and since they were once neighbors that were close enough for the wives of the council to frequently interact, we see them approaching the manor. A guard asks them where they came from, and the stagecoach tells them that an imperial advisor from the former Brock territory has arrived. The knight tells his men to open the gates. Romandro confirms to Ian that he hasn't communicated with them recently. Ian says yes, after the incident at Brock, they shut their gates tightly. They probably thought it would be too much of a hassle to get involved, though they did send a letter to scope out the situation. If an advisor from the kingdom had not come, they probably would have tried to swallow Brock amidst all the confusion. They are brought to a nice room, and a man enters, introducing himself as Count Carlo Mirloff. Romandro greets him and introduces himself. Carlo glances over and recognizes who Ian is, and Ian greets him respectfully. Carlo then sighs, saying that he looks nothing like Vratz. Ian thanks him for the compliment, and Carlo tells him to take a seat, asking about them wanting food supplies. Romandro says indeed, and the situation is not great, and each meal is uncertain, so they are requesting help from Mirloff. Carlo says it looks like they don't have any other issues. Romandro explains that reconstruction is moving quickly, so if they can just solve the food issue, they can wrap up before winter. Carlo says he thought a lot about their letter, and he can't just ignore the sufferings of a neighbor, but he can't just cut off his own flesh to save another, so he's compiled a list of what they can buy and their prices. We see Romandro looking over it, a bit worried, and asking Carlo if he would give them a moment to discuss. Carlo laughs and asks, surely he doesn't mean with Ian, saying that it seems that the people from the capital truly don't have a prejudice. He continues to laugh, saying that he'll have their meal prepared while they discuss. Since they won't be able to eat when they get back, they should at least not starve while they're here. Then he closes the door. We see Romandro very annoyed with him, saying how dare he call himself a noble. Ian asks if he can take a look at the list, and then he's handed it. He starts reading through it as if it was the new chapter of a banger manhwa. He starts going through all of the food and how expensive it is. Romandro says that's exactly what he's saying, and he has no words, even if they claim that the revolt caused them to lose things as well. Ian puts the paper down and tells Romandro that if he can trust him, he can tell him a much more efficient way to use his funds, rather than something like this. Romandro is curious, so he asks him about it. Ian tells him to come close, and he starts whispering in his ear. We see them discussing something about labor, and Romandro is really surprised about it. We'll learn soon if it was a good idea or not. We see Carlo asking his butler if they are just leaving. The butler says yes, they said they'll treat it as if it didn't happen. Carlo says it seems like they are actually quite full. The butler says that the heavenly warrior tribe, who hate the cold, will return soon. Since the people are starving, he shouldn't have any options. The butler asks if he'll send them off. Carlo says no, they can just let them leave. As he is looking down at them from up above, we learn that Mirloff is far from the capital and thus has been relatively free from the influence of the emperor. However, if someone from the palace becomes the Lord of Brock, there is bound to be more interference and surveillance from the capital, and Mirloff will become restricted. We see Carlo is actually very worried, saying that he must obtain Brock at all costs. Then it jumps to Ian saying this is probably what he's thinking. Romandro says that the heavenly warrior tribe is on his side though, so his losses won't be small. Ian says that he'll probably think that taking on those losses is worth it. Seeing as the butler is late, it seems like the count himself won't send them off, and they should probably get going. Romandro says okay, and as they start going to the carriage, we hear a woman calling out to them. Ian is surprised and asks if she is Count Mirloff's wife. We see her in a green dress. She says she is, and says that he must be Ian. He bows and kisses her hand, saying that it's a pleasure to meet her, and she says likewise. He says that he heard she was friends with Mary, and he thought she would be the same age, but she's much younger than he thought, and instead of a noble's wife, she feels much different. As we see her giving him a semi-cold gaze, she glances over saying that the gentleman over there must be Romandro. She introduces herself as Ryan Mirloff, saying it's nice to meet him. He says she's right, and she says that she heard they just arrived, yet they're already leaving, asking if they ate. Romandro says they were offered a meal, but unfortunately, they were quite busy, so they were on their way out, and they can share a meal next time. She says she sees, and that's a shame. Then glances over back at Ian saying, by the way, there's something that she was curious about. Ian tells her to speak her mind, and she leans in close, saying she was just wondering who is using Countess Mary's room right now. He asks why she's curious, and she says that she lent her something and has not gotten it back yet, asking if anybody has been in there. Ian recalls Mary saying that she needs to get something from her room before they leave, and they can go to Mirloff after that, and this must be what she was referencing. Ian tells her that nobody goes around that area of the house and that she can visit whenever she likes. She says she understands and thanks him. The butler comes out surprised that she's here, and she says that their guests are leaving, asking where the count is. The butler says that he had something urgent come up and it would be difficult for him to leave the house at the moment. He asks for their understanding and says that as a neighboring territory, they can always ask for help when they need to. Romandro clears his throat, telling him to give them his thanks and that they will be leaving. And then their carriage leaves. We see Ryan smiling at them while they leave, and Ian glances back. Romandro sighs, asking if all Margraves are like that, saying his wife was weird too. Ian says that he didn't think she'd be so young. He really thought she would be the same age as Countess Mary. Romandro says anyways, this is not the issue, and he needs to hear more about this, asking about a crop with a harvest time of less than a month, saying that it's an amazing discovery, asking if it is from the desert and what it's called. Ian smiles warmly at him, saying he already knows it. We see Romandro making a strained face, saying he didn't think it would be Gula. He starts to cry, saying to think he was going to say something like that, they shouldn't have rejected the Countess' proposal. Ian says it's the truth though. Gula seeds are quite useful as food. They can be cooked in many ways and their nutritional effectiveness is incredible. Later on, it will be called the blessings of the gods. Romandro tells him that he needs to say something that makes sense. Ian tells him that he's been eating it lately, and he'll like it as well. It only takes a month to grow, and winter won't be a problem. The stagecoachman then tells them that they've entered the downtown area. Ian says they should wait a little bit as he should be coming around now. We see Beric open the door, saying that his mission is complete. Ian glares at him, saying it looks like he thought his mission was drinking. Beric laughs, saying no, the owner kept asking him to, so he just had a little, and he did what he was asked. He was at the most popular pub in the area, and not only did dozens of people hear him, he posted a notice too. Romandro asks about what. Ian says he told him he would buy labor from around here, and he sent out an announcement in Mirloff's downtown area. For the next month, he is willing to pay anyone who brings him gula 1 gold for every 3 bags. Romandro is surprised, asking if he's for real. Even Beric asks if he's being too generous. Ian says he has to do that, so they search the forest in earnest. If you think of the prosperity that even 1 bag of gula will bring, it is very worth it. To him, the most important thing is the timing. If he didn't set the rule of 1 month, people would start farming gula, but he can't allow that to happen yet. And he asks how the agricultural situation was this year. Beric tells him it was a lot worse this year than last. They don't normally do that well, but this year the river became even dirtier due to the fighting at Brock, so it was even more difficult than usual. Because of that, the foreign traders have raised their prices as well. Ian says if they can harvest as much gula as possible, Mirloff might propose a deal to them instead. We see Romandro sweating bullets, saying he must surely have a plan. If not, magic user or not, he is going to give him a few good hits. And then they start to leave downtown. Later on, back at the estate, we see the chef making a worried face, telling Romandro, "Bon appetit." Romandro is drooling out of his mouth, and the chef says, as Sir Ian commanded, he cooked up some gula dishes. There is a stir-fry, cream soup, and some honey-glazed gula. The chef starts to cry, saying he's going to say this in advance, and he's only followed Ian's orders. If something happens, just end it at his neck and spare the other cooks and his daughter. Romandro says the color looks nice, but he is not reassured. He asks Ian if the doctor is on standby. Ian says no, since the doctor is at his home this hour. Romandro says he told him to have him on standby though, and Ian laughs, saying it was just a joke and to eat up. Romandro looks hesitant at his food, then takes a bite and starts to shiver and drops his spoon. We see him start floating off into space as if this was Food Wars, and he wonders why it tastes so good. Ian says they should all have a taste as well. And the cooks ask if he's talking about them. Ian says yes, surely they are curious about how it tastes. They all look at each other like they do. And then Hannah appears, asking if she can try the honey-glazed one. Ian says sure and hands her the plate. She takes one and thanks him and says that this shit smacks. Ian says he agrees, and she starts to talk about the flavors. The other cooks ask if it's really that good and if they could try it as well. Ian says of course they should try it. We see them both eating it, and they say there's no way this is gula and that it's too good. They say that it must be because they haven't had a proper meal in a while. Ian smiles watching all of them, and he says those who are the connection between him and the people of the territory are an important starting point for spreading gula. One person will end up becoming 2 to 4, and so on. It starts as a local thing, but it'll soon become known across the land. Romandro says this is amazing, asking how he discovered it. Ian says it was just good luck. He says they need to create an insulated storage area and create an environment where gula can be preserved. It will sprout wherever there is soil, but it is weak to the cold. Then they can rely on gula to survive the winter. And while they prepare for winter, they can also monopolize all of the gula in Brock and Mirloff. Romandro says if there are no side effects after a few days, he'll write about this in his imperial report, asking if that's okay. Ian says of course, and that he should spread it as much as possible and make sure to explain how it was discovered. Romandro says of course, and he'll be sure to mention him in the report, asking if he can have more. Ian says sorry, but they don't have enough yet and asks for all the workers until they've collected enough gula seeds. They should keep quiet about it, and they all nod saying okay. It then jumps to a fancy room as we see Margrave smiling, and he asks his father if he called for him. We are introduced to the current emperor of Varial, Clay, and he says yes. He says he must be busy nowadays, and he hasn't seen his face in a while. Margrave says of course, he's always busy. He notices his father looking at something, asking if there's something wrong. He then says Margrave's name, asking if there's something going on between him and Gale. Margrave says no, asking why he's curious. He says yesterday he dreamed about Carolina, Gale's mother, someone he hadn't seen in a while, appeared and told him to call for Gale. Margrave goes to reassure him, but Clay says that if he says it's fine, He believes him and he's held him for too long. Outside of the room, there are a lot of maids and butlers around. Margrave asks if one of them is managing His Majesty's bedchambers correctly. The woman says yes, and there haven't been any issues so far. Then he asks why his dreams seem so scary. She asks what he's talking about, and then we hear a loud slapping sound as we see her on the floor shaking in fear. He says that if he has to hear something weird from him just one more time, he'll have the necks of everyone in this wing of the palace. The woman says of course while remaining on the floor. Margrave then asks if has anything left in his schedule, and the butler says no. But Romandro did send a report, but the contents are so shocking that he thinks he'll have to hear about them himself. Margrave tells him to keep it short as he's tired. The butler says okay, and then starts telling him about it. Margrave is surprised as he has learned that Ian is actually a magic user. Not only that, but he's joined forces with the Heavenly Warrior tribe and taken over Brock, and in the middle of all this Erica was chased out. Margrave starts to retie his hair, saying that this is a mess and he'll be going to his office, and do follow him. The butler says yes, and we are shown the palace from outside. The next morning in Mirloff, we hear some men talking about taking Gula to Brock and how they'll pay for it, but they think it's too good to be true as it's just a weed, asking what they'll be using it for. One of the traders says he doesn't know, and they said it's only for 1 month, and he explains that all of the nearby parts of the forest have already been emptied, and if you want to get more, you'll have to go even deeper. Then they ask how much money was being offered in the first place. They jump us back to the Brock territory. We hear some construction workers talking about 1 gold for 3 bags. They wonder if maybe Ian is spending money because he's bored. He says life is crazy, he never thought he would hear of someone spending money to buy some weeds, but it seems like everybody's in agreement with the fact that they don't care as it is good for them. We see a lot of bags of Gula plop down in front of Ian, and he asks how many they've collected today. We learn that they've collected 49, and Ian says this is faster than he thought. As Hannah and them discuss the growth for Gula, we learn that regardless of how much water they put in, it always takes the same time to grow, and they start talking about changing the soil. Hannah then starts yelling at Romandro that he can't do that, and they don't have enough to plant, asking what they're supposed to do if he eats it all, and he says it's his fault as he wasn't thinking. Ian watches them all chatter, and Barrack says he wants to guess what he's thinking, saying that must be because that old man has been quiet for too long. Ian says he's exactly right. Malene does not leave his room, but seeing as his subordinates are always milling around, it looks like he is planning something. He'll have to retrieve the magic stone he hid for surveillance soon as well. He tells Barrack to let Romandro inform Malene that he'd like them to have lunch together with everybody. Barrack asks what he'll do if they say no. Ian tells them to say that it'll be an important meeting as it is mandatory to attend, and then they can retrieve the magic stone while he's at it. Malene asks what he needs all of a sudden to call them out of nowhere. Ian laughs saying it's because he wanted to see their faces, and he wanted to know if they were comfortable, plus he had something he wanted to say. Digger sighs saying that they're very busy telling him to spit it out. Ian says it's nothing too big, he just found a new crop that'll let them through the winter. Malene asks if he's talking about Gula and Ian says as expected he already knew. Malene asks how he would not know, with the rumors that he's paying money for a worthless weed have spread across not only Brock but also Mirloff. But there are also other rumors that are saying that the bastard son Ian is buying up weeds because he wants to waste the support money and give this land to the Heavenly Warrior tribe. Ian asks if that's really one of the rumors, saying that's quite foolish. If that were the case, would he work this hard in reconstruction or allow them all to stay here and waste his food supplies? Digger and Mac feels offended and Ian says he doesn't know the origin of the rumors, but if those people continue to spread such false rumors to let them know that he nor his allies will not take this insult lightly and that there will be severe consequences. Malene quickly changes the conversation as it was Digger and Mac spreading the rumors and asks Ian if he doesn't know what kind of plant Gula is. Ian says he knows it very well, it's poisonous, and since it spreads easily you need to pull it out whenever you see it. However, the seeds are not only tasty but they are also quite nutritious. It's a crop worthy of the name blessings from the gods, and he says that Malene told him something before. Nothing from nature is noble or common, and anything that can solve famines is a thankful thing. He also said that the second prince agreed with him and that Malene liked it as well. Malene says they could pretend what he's saying is correct, even then the people will not accept it. If you can't overcome the common knowledge that Gula is poisonous, not only will it fail to become a staple but people won't even look at it. Ian says he has some thoughts about that part and he starts to tell them about his method, and we see them watching intently as Malene starts to get angry and screams how dare he, asking if he thinks the imperial family is a joke. If that plant causes any problems it could damage the honor of the imperial family. Since the Gula has been confirmed to be safe there won't be any issues. Ian continues saying that he told him that solving crisis was the lifeblood of leaders. He didn't know he would bring up such a trivial reason. Malene asks how that's trivial, suggesting that he's saying the imperial family's honor is trivial. Ian says of course it is, in front of death all else fades away, asking if he will feed the starving people with honor. Malene begins to sweat and Ian says that he himself is misunderstanding something. He's not asking for his permission. If they have any plans to interfere then they can leave immediately, and he will tell his warriors to guide them out. Mac asks him what kind of disrespect this is and Ian says they should know their place. While he was looking for a way to save his people, he asks what the three of them have been doing besides snitching to the palace about his movements and opposing him at every opportunity, asking if there's anything else have done behind his back. Ramondo tries to defuse the situation by telling everybody to calm down, saying that he himself ate it and it tastes good and there are many different ways to prepare it, and they are all very easy. Ian glances over at Barrack, giving him the okay signal. Ian sits up saying he said everything he's wanted to and his work is important, so if they continue to disrupt his efforts he won't forgive them. He hopes they all have a nice dinner, telling Ramondo it's time to leave. As he exits, Barrack says he was really cool out there, and Ian says it wasn't much asking if he brought it. Barrack says of course while showing the crazy medieval Bluetooth. Then hands it over to Ian, who smiles saying that he did well and they want to know what their friends have been saying. Ian plops it into some water and we start to hear them talking while Ian and Barrack listen. Ian is writing everything down and we see Barrack's facial expression after he hears a line about them removing the one blocking their path. He says this means that they're going to try to kill him. Ian says to them it's a good method, they would rather get rid of him than lose Brock, which they've worked so hard to take over. Barrack asks if they should get rid of them first and Ian says no, they need to catch them in the act. It looks like they were just waiting for an opportunity, but because he's been working there are almost no times where he's alone, and since his sleep terms are irregular they'll send an assassin soon probably. Ian says it reminds him of the old days when he was the emperor. He tells Barrack that he needs a lock-in. Barrack says he's perma-locked and Ian says from now on he can't miss a single thing, and he needs to prepare someone to monitor Malene's people as well. The next morning we see a bunch of workers being instructed by Romandro, telling them that they need to build a bridge. He throws a gula seed into his mouth and the workers notice this, saying that he keeps eating something out of his pouch and he won't even tell them what it is. One of the other workers tell them that it is the gula seeds. They tell him that he's lying, asking why the imperial advisor would eat it. We hear one of the workers saying he's heard this from a friend. And it jumps back to Ian saying that he'll use rumors as propaganda to move the citizens. The imperial palace has been researching stable crops and they found that gula seeds have great taste of nutrition. Romandro, who came from the imperial palace, gathered gula due to its knowledge. Romandro asks if that's really gonna be okay and Ian says of course. Rumors in the countryside only travel to the palace through Romandro and Malene's letters. It'd be good to leak some other research results as well. For example, it jumps back and we hear the man saying that if you eat gula seeds your skin becomes better and your blood becomes cleaner, and they can't even eat it at the capital because it's too scarce. And now it makes sense why the advisor is paying money to gather it here. The workers start talking about it, asking if they should eat some too. We see Barrack behind Ian saying that the rumor has spread a lot. And at the pub rumors are saying that the emperor is eating them to live longer. Ian laughs saying that he's done a great job and it's now time to prepare for their next phase. It jumps to some feet sneaking through the gula seeds. One of them says he thought he saw it correctly. Another one says he was right. Who would think they would grow gula in a greenhouse like this? The rumors about gula being precious in the capital must be true, and that they should leave before they are caught. A guard quickly shouts at them, and points his spear at them, saying he just stopped one of them, and now there's more, and to put their hands up. Then tells them to follow him outside. Outside, Ian thanks the guard for working hard. Barrack is there too. The guard says it's so late, asking what he's doing out, and suggests an escort. He says he only needs Barrack. Then glares at the people with the guard, asking them if they are thieves. They drop to their hands and knees, begging for forgiveness, saying that the harvest has been bad, and it's been hard to make a living. Ian says they should have waited a little longer, and tells the guard to put them in prison, thanking him for his good work. Barrack says the plan was to lose out on some of the harvest by guarding it very loosely to cause people wanting to go in, yet he's not letting anybody through. Ian says they might be able to do that in other territories or the capital, but since this is a territory with no formal leader, they just let thieves have their way when the situation gets out of hand. And for them, they should use a different method, one that is much better suited for them. In the town, it jumps to the middle of the street as Ian is knocking on one of the doors. A man sighs, saying that he's coming. We see a child on his back. If it's introduced him, I forgot his name. Ian reveals himself, and the man is surprised. Ian says he doesn't want to wake the kids. The man asks him what's wrong, and if he did something bad. Ian hands him a pouch, saying to take this and it's gula. Unlike what the rumors say, it's not a miracle drug, but the fact that the rural advisor enjoys eating it because of the taste and nutrition is true. While they're strictly protecting it in the mansion, the advisor keeps telling them to spread these across the territory as soon as possible. But he heard about him raising 5 children on his own, and it touched his heart, so he's giving him some in advance. The man starts to cry, and Ian tells him that he has a lot more houses to stop by, so he won't keep him here for too long, saying surely he knows to only eat the seeds. The man says of course. Ian tells him that just 1 gula seed can produce 10 more plants. Eat a little bit, and plant the rest, and make sure to give some to his neighbors. The man thanks him, and we see him bowing while Ian leaves. Beric says he feels like he can never understand him. Ian says he always understands what he's thinking, though, saying that he can tell that Beric just wants to get back and sleep. Beric says exactly. Ian says while the people from the palace were monopolizing and cultivating gula, the merchant supplies have been dwindling, so the people must have been worrying about how to get through the winter. If he distributes gula like this, surely the people will see him in a better light. Beric calls him a shameless bastard. Ian tells him it's time to hurry as they are going to the next place with children. We see a woman very surprised to see him and the children. Ian hands her the bags and gives her the whole spiel. It happens again with an old man who has an injured leg. Beric notices something as they are being tailed by a man. The man glances at them and then leaves, heading elsewhere. He enters a room, and we see Mac asking him what the situation is as it was none other than Deeger. Deeger tells him that he went out at night, and he is distributing gula. Mac says that is crazy, and tells Malene that Ian is quite shameless. Malene says that Ian is blatantly saying that since Romandro, who is honorable, will credit him as the one who discovered gula, he will have the support of the people and favor from the imperial palace. However, if it's just the 2 of them who go out at dawn like that, there is no better opportunity to get rid of them. The next day, it looks like the reconstruction of one of the villages is wrapping up. Romandro then asks about their gula supply, and Ian says it looks like they can start giving more out. The rumor is spreading far and wide due to the people who received some in advance. Romandro says he understands, asking if he is going out again tonight. Ian says yes, as he plans to do it for around 4 more days. Romandro is surprised that he is working both day and night, saying that magic users are supposed to have some special abilities, and it seems to be his endless stamina. Ian changes the topic, saying they've made their distribution plan, so they should wrap it up here, asking if there's anything else they'd like to talk about. Nersum raises his hand, saying they've received a message from the Great Desert, and that Madame Winchen's health is tanking fast. Nersum says as the situation is urgent, they've given up on the Silisk cultivation, and decided to use their remaining roots. Ian says he understands. Romandro butts in, saying he would like to be in the conversation, asking who Wenchen is, and what is a Silisk. Ian goes to explain it, and then it jumps to after the explanation. Romandro recaps it by saying that the leader of the Heavenly Warriors has fallen ill, and that he decided to use up all the Silisk, the valuable flowers that he had gotten. Kakan says the reason they've made such a decision is because of Brock's current situation. Kakan says Ian must be aware of their funeral customs. Ian says that he is. When the leader, the head, or the vice head dies, all members of the Heavenly Warrior tribe must seclude themselves for a year. Thus they will no longer be able to reside in Brock. Considering Vice Head Wenchen's age and condition, they truly don't have any time left. Ian asks Romandro if he has received a reply to the report he sent to the palace. Romandro says they've received nothing yet. Ian says he's asking specifically about Margrave's reply. Romandro says he's only replied once. It wasn't much, and he merely asks him to report the fief's current situation. Regarding the report of him being a magic user, he's already received a reply, telling him to watch him closely, and that was all. Ian confirms that Margrave wants the leader of Brock to not have any relation to Malene's associates or the second prince. Romandro says there are such circumstances. Ian says he might have summarized as much, but he had an inkling. However, he is on bad terms with Malene's associate. As such, he should recommend him to be the new lord. Romandro is surprised, and Ian says if he does not become the lord, they will have to return to the Great Desert. As he is the previous lord's bloodline, the new lord will not leave him alone. They will attempt to monopolize his ability in the imperial palace by enslaving him. The possession of a new lord is the only thing that will ensure his safety, and the peace of Brock. As an advisor, he would certainly wish to quickly choose the lord, and return home. Even when considering public opinion, None would be more fit than himself. Romandro thinks about it, saying that that's true. He did step forward during the reconstruction before anyone else, and more importantly discovered Gula. He is lacking when considered to be a frontier lord, but it's not bad. He says he will speak frankly. His Highness Margrave doesn't understand the relationship between Ian and Malene. He reported his father through Malene, and Malene made the good decision to instate a new lord. On top of that, as a magic user, he will certainly end up associated with the military of magic. Because they are colluding with the second prince, he expects him to become his strength. Ian asks if that's all, saying he could prove himself. Romandro asks how, and Ian says he will meet with his highness, the first prince, privately, and tell him himself. No matter how detailed he writes a report, there will be parts that cannot be conveyed with words alone. However, he can prove immediately, even now, that he stands in opposition to Malene's, as he will prove it with death, as there is no better evidence. Romandro says he will convey this much to Margrave, and they should end the conversation here. Ian thanks him, but says he has one more request, saying that he would like to know if there are any groups treating Silisk as middlemen. Romandro says he will look into it, but it's his first time hearing the flower, so he doesn't know if he'll be able to find anything. Ian thanks him, but if neither he nor Romandro can find anything, then it will be difficult to find it out here in Varial. Romandro exits, telling Ian to take it easy, and get some rest. Ian thanks him, saying that they can meet again tomorrow. He tells Beric it's time to head out and return early today. Beric says he must be tired, right? And Ian says yes, as he can't keep his eyes open. It transitions to night, as he is handing out Gula again. Ian's surprised that nobody was sleeping, and asking what he's supposed to do, saying he hasn't prepared anything. We see the man from earlier telling the lady not to bother Ian, and he's helping them while avoiding the surveillance of those Imperial Palace guys. We see him finishing up trading everything to the citizens, and once the bag is empty, he tells Beric it's time to go, but Beric is clearly looking at something, telling Ian that there are 3 men. He says he sees, and they should hurry back, as it's quite late, as 3 men begin to trail them from the alley. They call out, asking him if he is Ian. Ian asks what they'll do if he is. They leap at him, and we see Beric block 2 of their attacks. He looks at their blade, and says geez, and then knocks their attacks away. Ian quickly tells him to look up, and Beric does so, as there is a bald man flying in the sky. He comes crashing down on where Beric was standing, but Beric evades the attack by leaping away. But he doesn't give him a moment to relax, as he charges back in with a slash. One of the men avoids it, and Ian says judging by their swordsmanship, and their ability to maintain a distance, they've received proper training. On top of that, seeing as how they seem to be aware of Beric's skills, there's a high chance they are directly linked to Malene. He tells Beric to let him live. Beric asks if it's okay to cut him up, just so he doesn't die. Ian says to do whatever he wants, but realizes something is off. If they are aware of Beric's skill, then they should be aware of the fact he's a magic user, yet nobody is attacking him. The convenience ensues as we hear a lot of footsteps, and Ian says that's obvious, and they are all working quite hard into this late night. One of the men pulls out a weapon, telling him to shut up, confirming that it is Ian. Ian smiles while releasing his magic in the palm of his hand, saying he is indeed him. Ian says he thought it was taking a long time, but it's because they were gathering a lot of people. He asks why they were doing this, asking if they don't value their lives. They tell him to shut up and just die quietly, asking if he knows how much his body is worth right now. One of them charges in, telling him to just stand there and let it happen. He swings, but Ian ducks under it, still with the magic in his hand. He begins to swirl it and puts it right in the man's face. The man starts to see the magic circle and realizes he's screwed. Then a bright light quickly follows from his head. His eyes start to look like he is losing consciousness as blood pours out from his nose. He falls to the floor, struggling to speak. Another man runs in and swings again. Ian dodges it, doing the same thing to this man, except to his chest. The man coughs blood and falls over. Ian says that they all seem like commoners, asking if they are citizens of Brock. They panic and say he doesn't need to know. He says that's okay, but he's not good at controlling his strength, so they can come at him if they wish. One of them starts to panic, saying there wasn't any talk of this. Another one tells him not to be scared, as he's just a child, and if they charge together, they can do it. They all start to run in, thinking they have the numbers advantage. They are quickly met by Beric, dashing in soaked in blood. He asks them who the hell is making him stay awake as he slices them down. He double grips his sword and swings, asking why he has to be doing this. Ian asks if he kept them alive, And Beric says if he's talking about the guy from earlier and that they're still breathing. Ian puts his hand on Beric's shoulder, telling him he did a good job, but he needs to please keep at least one alive. Beric wonders if he's too tired, saying this drug is awesome. Of course, he's just talking about Ian's magic. Ian asks why he had to phrase it like that, asking if he's listening. Beric says of course and yells while going in with his blade. He starts slicing them down, and they realize that his eyes are not normal, saying that he is angry. As they fall one after another, they realize that he has gone insane and begin to run away. Ian sighs, wondering what they are even talking about, saying that he is smiling so happily. There's no way he is as angry as they expect him to be. It jumps to him laughing, saying that felt great and he feels refreshed as well. Ian checks on the first attackers and says he really left one alive. The man glances up at Ian, and he says he thinks he's seen him before. Beric asks if he's certain, and Ian tells Beric to look at his face, saying that they definitely did. Beric says he doesn't know, but he's really ugly. Poor bro caught a stray. Beric then says look at him covering his face because he said that. Ian realizes, but it's too late, as the man begins to burn his face off and screams. Beric wonders why he did that, saying they can't recognize him anymore. Ian says that's the point dumbass, his entire face is melted, and it seems like a poison used by assassins to avoid revealing their identity. Ian tells Beric to go get more people, as he wants to take the ones alive to the residence, and it seems like the guards will have a lot to do soon. Back at the palace, we see Mac wondering if his people succeeded, asking what will happen if they don't. Digger says they are former Imperial guards and that he's being too paranoid. Mac screams, saying they're too relaxed, and they need a backup plan if Petrio fails. Malene tells him that he's being too loud and someone might hear him. He says that Petrio is someone with exceptional skills. He's a bit old, but he was the vice captain of the prince's personal guards, and he's quite loyal, so he won't leave traces. Beric begins to walk down the hallway as they talk, and they continue by saying that Petrio ambushed him with 10 other people in a small alley. It'll be difficult for them to survive. A knock appears at the door as they talk about waiting patiently. They all grow worried and look at each other. Mac calls out, asking Petrio if it's him. The door begins to slowly open, and they call out again to Petrio, but instead see Beric, and he asks if that's who they were waiting for while laughing. They instantly all panic, and he says they need to follow him now. They ask what he thinks he's doing. He puts the blade to Digger's throat, saying that they need to listen to his words, and Ian said he could kill them if he wanted to. Digger calls him a lowly bastard, saying they're from the Imperial Palace. Beric puts the blade closer to his throat, saying that he knows, but they are at the border, and Ian said that over here, they don't care about anything like that. If you've watched till the end, comment, queso, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.